Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Naruto x Yugao x Samui x Ino? Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the THEMIGHTYSHEVENOM13 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Our story starts on Misty Bridge where two battles were happening. One battle was between two legendary ninja that could both be considered titans. These legendary ninja are Kakashi Haddock and Zabuza Mamachi. The other battle was between three people. Two bloodline users and the heroine of our story. The first bloodline user was a girl that had accompanied Zabuza here and was the last of the once plentiful Yuki clan. This girl is Hakuyuki. The other bloodline user is an arrogant boy with spiky black hair that is shaped like a duck's dot. He is also the last of the Uchiha clan. He is Sasuke Uchiha and as stated he is in whole. The last person is a girl who is the last of the legendary Uzumaki clan, at least last known Uzumaki. She's also the last Namikaze and a partial Senju. This girl has blonde hair that hangs over one side of her face. Her one visible eye was blue and shined with an innocence never seen before. Her skin was tan, but not overly so. On the side of her face that was visible three whisker-like marks could be seen giving her an animalistic appearance. Her body was actually pretty well developed considering the circumstances. She was dressed in a black jacket that was unzipped and had the hood down. This revealed her wide undershirt with the red butterflies moving across it. She had on red pants to go with this shirt that had black lines going across the knees. She had on thick black boots with white strings hanging from the top. Starting at each wrist is black tape that covers her entire hand. They are tinges with red right now as Naruto keeps having to wipe the blood from her mouth as she's pelted with very sharp and fine needles. Sasuke with his precious 1 Sharingan was trying and failing to keep up with Haku's speed. Haku hating the fact that she was gonna have to kill her new friend, wished things were different. Drawing her senbon she tossed them at both Naruto and Sasuke. Sasuke pissed that this loser was outclassing him grabbed Naruto and to her horror and Haku's utter shock, used the girl as a human shield. The sharp needles penetrated and punctured several of Naruto's organs and even nicked her heart. This action kicked up something inside of Naruto that had been dormant since 2 days after her birth. A gigantic aura of pure energy coated her body and Sasuke Uchiha was literally burned. He screamed as he collapsed on the ground, his arms, part of his face and both of his precious eyes burning away. Haku had to shield herself to keep herself from being permanently blinded by the intensity of the energy. This energy was so powerful that it literally obliterated the mist, exposing the entire unfinished bridge to all. Kakashi was now visible with his hand through Zabuza's. Zabuza with wide eyes was shocked that he had been killed so easily. Sakura wasn't paying attention to the two, she was staring at the ice dome and the giant pillar of glowing light. Tazuna little terrified was wondering if Gato could see the light. Said tiny tyrant could indeed see the light and for some reason it sent shivers down his spine. Inari and Tsunami who had gathered the people of their village as Naruto's heroic rescue of them had lit a fire in their very souls. Kakashi looking at the pillar of light was very worried because if Naruto was damaged in any way he'd might as well his goodbye as that girl had powerful ties. Naruto inside of the light found herself in a pure white area with nothing around for miles. She wondering where she was as she had just been in a battle with Haku for the fate of Wave. She blinked when someone appeared in the empty space. This someone was literally radiant like the sun on a sunny day. They were also massive as their height easily eclipsed that of Naruto. This kinda terrified her as she had no clue where she was or who this person was. The figure then became visible and Naruto's face turned red. It was gorgeous woman with long flowing black hair and radiant skin that was blemish-free and gorgeous. Her eyes were this mesmerizing cobalt blue and Naruto could just make out the slitted black pupils. Her nose was normal, which led to her that had a thin layer of ruby red tick on them. Her black eyebrows were prim and plucked revealing her nobility. Her frame was perfect as not even the most gorgeous woman could compare to her. She was dressed in a light pink kimono that hugged her frame in all the right ways. This stunning woman had a very happy yet serene smile on her face. She getting close to Naruto looked down and smiled before she shrunk down to a human size. She was still taller than Naruto, but that wasn't hard. The woman still with her smile said hello Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto blinked several times and asked how do you know my name and who are you? The woman laughing said I know your name because I know everything about you. I know that you hate your team, I know that despite Hirazen's best effort, you still remember your birth mother and your birth sisters abandoning you for the Uzumaki clan. I know you blame Sasuke for the death of Mikoto Uchiha. I know that sometimes you wish you could just die. I know that you don't hate the Kyuubi for its actions. I know that you know about that old cripple's little hidden forces. I know that you harbor a deep hatred for most of the village hidden in the leaves. I know who you have crushes on, and I know that you adore Tsunade's Senju. Naruko's eyes weren't wide, but were narrowed as she asked, "Who are you, lady?" The woman laughed softly and said, "I go by many names, but the ones most mortals know me as Diana." Naruko's eyes were still narrowed as she asked, "What do you mean most mortals? Are you not human or mortal or something?" Diana smiling said, "No, Naruko-chan, I am not mortal or human. For you see, I am Izanami no Mikoto, the primordial of death, and ever since the death of Izanagi, I have gained more titles and powers." Naruko's eyes were wide now as she quickly bowed as low as she could. Diana spotting this said, "No need to bow, Naruko." Naruko blinking asked, "Are you sure, Diana-sama?" Diana smiling softly said, "I'm sure." This made Naruko stop bowing. Diana then said, "Now allow me to explain where you are, how you got here, and what I hope to happen. This, Naruko-chan, is the waiting room. This is where souls wait to be judged before being sent to either hell or heaven. The bastard Uchiha on your team essentially killed you when he used you as a human shield. Every part of you is here. You got here due to the small part of me inserted inside of every mortal being. It reacted to your death and sent you here." She paused to let Naruko absorb what she had just learned. Naruko with wide eyes couldn't believe that she was actually dead. She then gulped as Diana could be here to send her to hell for the Kyuubi sins. Diana ignoring Naruko's gulp said, "Now I'm not here to send you to hell or even to judge you. I dictated that to my daughter Amaterasu. Instead I'm here hoping against hope that one of my greatest dreams will be realized." Naruko blinked hearing this, asked, "What dream, Diana-sama?" She smiling brightly at Naruko said, "My dreams is for me to have 4 daughters. As my husband is dead and I refuse to take another or lie with another man, I am unable to bear another child." Naruko tilting her head asked, "Why don't you just adopt a girl, Diana-sama?" Diana giggling said, "That is my plan, Naruko-chan, but it can't just be any girl. No, she has to be pure of heart, have a strong will, and most definitely need a mother in her life." Naruko scratching her head asked, "I don't know anyone like that, Diana-sama, do I?" Diana giggling said, "You do, Naruko-chan. You know the exact person I'm talking about very well." Naruko now extremely confused asked, "Are you talking about Am?" Diana shaking her head said, "No, but Am Ichiraku does adore this person." Naruko hearing this started to think about the people Am said she adored. The only people Am adored was Tuchi, who was her father, and Naruko. Naruko's eyes widened as she pointed at herself and asked, "Me?" Diana nodded and said, "Yes, you, Naruko-chan. I want you as my 4th and last daughter. I want you as my baby girl. You're the perfect person, as your heart is pure although you have much hate in it. Your will is titanic as almost nothing can change your mind once it's made up. Most of all, you're starving for the affection of a mother." Naruko scratched the back of her head as everything Diana had just said was true. She was about to ask about perks for becoming Diana's child when said woman said, "If you accept, not only will you ascend beyond the limitations of a mortal, but you'd gain 3 loving and overprotective sisters who'd spoil you rotten. You'd gain the undying love of a mother who would also spoil you rotten. You'd come back to life as a goddess. The Kyuubi wouldn't be killed but sent to Pocket Dimension to be free and be your personal summon. You'll gain 4 unique bloodlines, including 3 that will make you a very powerful Kunoichi. You'll get 4 main summoning contracts, with one of those 4 having 7 sub-summons. You'll also be a princess of creation." Naruko blinked hearing all of this and asked, "These bloodlines, what will they be, and what are the 7 sub-summons?" Diana said, "The first will allow you to transform into a long-dead species of creatures known as kaiju. Kaiju were monsters of immense power, and some were revered as gods. Your initial kaiju will be Zilla, a defect version of another kaiju known as Godzilla. You'll be able to unlock more as you grow. The second bloodline is called Anthropomorphize. It allows you to transform into enhanced version of animals with human traits. You gain 9 of these animals. They are as followed. Alicorn, which is a unicorn with the wings of a Pegasus and powers of an earth pony. The Great White Shark, because I really liked sharks and is sad that they were nearly wiped out in the Third Shinobi World War. Bull, because your will. Hippo, Rhino and Elephant. Because they too were nearly wiped out in the last war. Anaconda, because they're powerful creatures that have all but vanished from the world. Lioness, because you're fierce like the mighty lion. Finally, the striped hyena, as I think it fits with your style." She paused to let Naruko absorb this info. She picked back up, "With your 3rd bloodline is the power of destruction. This bloodline allows you to harness the very powers of destruction and use it. The last bloodline ties in with your 7 sub-summons. It's called Entity, and it allows you to control your 7 sub-summons. These 7 sub-summon are ruthless and merciless killers from another dimension. They literally are an extension of the will of the entity, which is you. These 7 killers are the Trapper, who captures his foes, hangs them and sets traps below them. The Hillbilly, who wields a chainsaw to slash his victims in half. The Wraith, who can vanish while he hunts. The downside to the Wraith is that he can be heard appearing and vanishing. The Nursuo can teleport across the area, but has a cooldown period. The Hagwo creates traps to summon statues of herself that she can teleport to once tripped. The Shape, who is a ruthless killer who always has an obsession. Finally we have the Doctorwo can shock his victims to make them go insane as he chases them. Naruto whistled hearing this and asked what is the other two summons. Diana smiling said the legendary Leviathan and the Lion Clan. Naruto hearing all of this had to think for a few minutes. She scratching her face asked what would happen to Sasuke team. Diana said if you accept he'll be put on trial for attempted murder of a princess. He won't get away with it. Even if you don't accept I'll make sure he is punished for his crimes. Naruto asked what about Wave. Diana sighing said if you don't accept it'll become even worse and Gato will kill Tazuna after making him witness the rape of his daughter and grandson. Naruto's eyes widened hearing this as sure Inari was an emo, but she didn't want that to happen to him. She gaining a determined look said I accept Diana, but don't think for a second that I'll trust you or call you mom until you've proven yourself to me. The same goes for your 3 daughters. Diana smiled brilliantly hearing this and said thank you so much Naruto-chan. I'll inform my 3 daughters as soon as you leave. She then pulling Naruto into a hug said I promise we'll be the family you always needed. She then let Naruto vanish back to the real world. Ending the hug she transformed back into her giant form and said Amaya, Tsukiko and Satsuna, I can't wait to inform you of your new sister. She then vanished in flash of light. Back on the bridge, Naruto inside of the light suddenly roared as her very blood started to boil. This roar was the start of a transformation. She shot up height from 4.9 feet tall until she stood at a staggering 9 feet 7 inches tall. Her clothes were destroyed from said sudden growth spurt. Her body then became coated in dense charcoal and blood-red scales. Her broadened as her arms grew in length and width. These arms gained scales as her hands widened and gained what looked like webbing between the fingers. Thick black claws grew out where the fingernails were. Her legs went through a similar transformation, except for the claws were thicker here, giving it a more lethal look. A thick tail appeared with the point being rounded, yet sharp. Rows of thick and deadly spikes appeared on the back of Naruto's new form. These spikes glowed with a radioactive power, one that the elemental nations had never seen before. Naruto's human eyes quickly shifted into golden crocodilian-like eyes. She then gained about 195 pounds. Naruto was now fully transformed and ready to attack. The light then died down and she dropped onto the bridge. This kicked up a cloud of smoke that made everyone wonder. When it cleared, everyone blanched, even the just arrived Gato. The transformed Naruto was crouched there looking at Haku like prey. Kakashi taking an actual step back asked in Kami's name what is that thing? Naruto then roared and all of Wave was able to hear it. She then vanished and the next thing anyone knew Haku was literally ripped apart, her gut spilling out along the bridge. Naruto didn't stop there though. No, she rushed directly towards Gato and his thugs. She reaching the first thug bit down on his head and with a single movement ripped it from his shoulders. She spitting the now melting head at another thug who got hit and was knocked unconscious. Naruto then ripped her claws through another thug removing his internal organs. She then took a deep breath in and everyone could see her spikes glowing. She then unleashed bright neon green flames on some of the thugs who screamed and started dissolving as if they had been sprayed with acid. Naruto then slammed her tail into a thug and his entire upper skeleton came out the back of his body. Naruto then slammed her diamond hard head on another thug, crushing him. Naruto then roared as one of thugs tried to attack her. He failed as the next thing anyone knew he was ripped apart lying on the bridge slowly dying. Naruto then continued the slaughter of the army of thugs. While she was doing this Gato ran towards his boat and was hurrying the captain to get it started. The captain did so seconds later and set sail going full speed like Gato had asked. Naruto finished with the thugs on the bridge looked towards the fleeing boat. She roared again and to the shock of Kakashi and Tazuna jumped headfirst into the water. Both men quickly rushed to the edge to see what had happened. Their eyes widened spotting Naruto swimming circles around Gato's boat like it was nothing. Naruto then diving under the boat touched the bottom with her feet. She then shot up directly towards the bottom of the boat. She then to the horror of Gato and the captain shot straight through the floor and all the way through the boat. She landing on the top of the boat, roared and unleashed more of her atomic flames on the boat. Gato running out with a life jacket on foolishly jumped into the water. Naruto ignoring the shrieking captain dived into the water and grabbed the trying to swim away Gato by his legs. Dragging him under she then proceeded to finish off the scum of a man. She did so by burning him with her atomic flames and dragging him to the bottom of the ocean. Gato screamed and screamed, but with each scream more water filled his lungs. The last thing the tiny tyrant saw before his death was Naruto's mouth full of teeth breathing fire on him. Naruto once spotting Gato dead swam back to the bridge and jumped out. Landing on the edge of said bridge, she let loose a loud roar just as Inari arrived with the rest of Wave. Said boy gained wide eyes spotting what looked like a dinosaur on the bridge roaring. Kakashi sliding in front of Tazuna was prepared to fight this beast if he had to. Naruko, done roaring, felt the transformation starting to go away. This made her shrink down to 6 feet even. Her weight also dropped from 290 pounds to 145 pounds. The scales shrunk until they were minuscule and acting like armor. Naruko's formerly small were no longer small, as they were now double D cups. Her formerly caving and rib-showing stomach turned into a toned and tight stomach. Her arms were now also muscular, but not overly so. Her legs were just as, if not more, muscular as her arms. Her tail had vanished along with most of the spikes. Her virginal vagina was visible as she was stark. Naruko's now charcoal black hair hung over her face like a veil. Her now golden eyes still had the crocodilian theme, but were now more human, and she had better vision. Eyes widened, spotting Naruko, and everyone gasped. This included the fawning over Sasuke Sakura. In a huge gust of wind, Naruko was once again dressed. She was now dressed in a sleeveless black top that showed off her crimson bra. This top stopped just above her belly button. On her hands were padded fingerless gloves that were red in color with black marks. She had on a tight pair of dark red pants that hugged her hips, and like a drunk hugs a toilet or a baby hugs its toy. She didn't have shoes on, as instead she had black bandages wrapped around feet stopping just before her toes. Her Konoha headband was around her neck, shining proudly. Sitting on her forehead was a golden tiara with several jewels in it. This crown looked to be worth a shitload of money. Inari with wide eyes asked Naruko. Naruko, barely being unconscious as her blood still burned, fell to her knees as she said, "Wave is free. Gato is dead. Enjoy peace." She then fell face first towards the bridge. Inari, ignoring everyone else, rushed to her, praying that she wasn't dead. He, reaching her side with Tsunami right beside him, let out a sigh of relief, finding that she was just unconscious. Tazuna, having heard what Naruko had said, felt the tears start pouring down his face. He, falling to his knees, said, "It's over. It's finally over. Gato is dead, Kaiza has been avenged, and Wave can finally know true peace." He, setting his eyes on Naruko, bowed lowly and said, "Thank you, Naruko-sama." Many people joined in on this, and before long a chant of "Thank you, Naruko-sama" could be heard. Inari, ignoring this, helped his mom carry their hero back to their house so she could be comfortable as she rested. Kakashi, with his jaw scraping the ground, had no clue what had happened to Naruko. He then smiled as it worked out in the end. He, turning, instantly noticed the damage to Sasuke. Curious, he picked the boy up, ignoring the cry of Sakura, and carried him to Tazuna's to inspect the injuries. 2 days later, and Naruko was letting Tsunami take care of her longer and thicker hair. The woman had also taken care of her nails and teeth. All of this was being done as she was apparently going to worship in Wave now. Someone had already started a statue of her in her normal form. She had seen what they had planned for her initial kaiju form, and honestly she liked the way it looked. She blinked when Tazuna walked in with yet another yellowfin tuna for her to eat. She, reaching forward, accepted the fish and ate it all in one bite. She, ignoring the crunching of the fish scales, turned to the window and looked out at the bright skies. She blinked when Inari ran into the room holding what looked like an action figure of herself. Smiling, she asked, "What is that, Inari-kun?" Inari, bouncing with glee, said, "It's your action figure, Ni-chan. It's the baddest princess version, with the catchphrase 'Heroes never die.'" Naruko giggled hearing this and asked, "What other action figures are there?" Inari, pulling out the kaiju one, said, "There's the Army Slayer Zilla form, the Nami no Kuni Guardian version, and my favorite version is the limited edition Queen of Mythical Beast version." Naruko, curious about the last two, asked, "Do you have the last two?" He, nodding, ran into his room and came out with a pretty big version of her kaiju form that actually had the spikes painted to look like she was about to breath out her atomic fire. The other one had her dressed in the coat of a mighty lion, with the mane having the Konoha symbol on it. This one was special as it also had her new tiara on it and a sword attached to its hip. Reaching over, she gently picked up the Guardian version and brushed her hand against it. Curious, she asked, "What makes this one so special?" Inari, walking over, lifted up one of the hands to reveal that it only had 4 fingers and said, "This one is special because someone forgot to give it 5 fingers. He, picking up the Queen of the Mythical Beast version, said, "This one is special because as I speak there are only 6 in existence. I have 1 and you have 2. Naruko, hearing this, blinked several times and asked, "When did I get 2? Inari, smiling, said, "They're with your other stuff. Including your tiara and your new fancy kimono." This made one of Naruko's prim and proper eyebrows rise as she asked, "What new kimono?" Tsunami, finishing her braiding of Naruko's hair, said, "The kimono one Amaya no Mikoto dropped off, saying something like her new little sister is a princess, so she should be dressed like one." Naruko, hearing this, had no clue which one of the trio Amaya was, but she was damned if she was wearing some frilly and most likely stuffy kimono. She then watched as Sakura walked in, wanting to once again talk to her. Naruko rolled her eyes as the pink-haired girl couldn't take the damn hint. Naruko didn't want to talk to her as the pink-haired troll would try to get her to heal what was done to the Uchiha. Naruko was honestly ready for the prick to be punished for his actions. Tazuna then burst into the room with a huge grin on his face. Naruto, curious, asked, why are you smiling, old drunk? He said they finished the statue and are setting it up in the middle of the bridge. She blinked hearing this and stood to her feet. Walking forward, she said, let's go see it. The family nodded and followed her with a fuming Sakura right behind them. An hour later and Naruto had a serene smile on her face as she sunk her feet into the sand on the shore of Wave. This was the most absolute peaceful feeling she had ever dealt with. The pink-haired troll known as Sakura Haruno was still bitching about the Uchiha and demanding that this shit be healed. Naruto had to push down the urge to breathe atomic flames on the girl, as at one point they had been friends. That changed when her and Ino started to notice boys in a different way. Now Naruto's only female classmate that was a friend was Ino. Hinata didn't count as the girl was a creep and stalked Naruto. Plus the so-called shy Hyuga girl stared at her too many times, with her clan's precious eyes on and healthy blush on her face. So Ino was her only female classmate that was a friend. She wasn't her only female friend, as Naruto had Aim, Tsunami and her recent friend Anko Mitarashi. Thinking about Anko made the serene smile on Naruto's face broaden as the purple-haired dango-loving woman took no shit and would gut you with a rusty spoon before letting you to walk all over her. Naruto aspired to be like her Aunt Tsunade as these two women were mighty. She then turned her head and smiled as Inari and a large group of kids came running towards her, all holding their toys. This made her happy as her actions and slaughter of an army of thugs had released the innocents Geto had captured and now kids were allowed to be kids again. She could also feel the oppressive aura around the island slowly going away. This made her smile widen as her actions, she didn't count the Uchiha or the Haruno, but her actions along with the actions of Kakashi had liberated this tiny island country from the greedy hands of a tiny tyrant. She blinked when some villagers walked up to her with several trays of fresh fish. The leader, a woman in her mid-30s, bowed and said, "We bring you fresh offerings from the sea, O Lady Naruto." Naruto, curious, looked at the fish and could instantly tell that they were common. Smiling softly, she accepted the fish and said, "Thank you for your offerings. I will enjoy these, and I grant you the blessing to catch even better fish." They all bowed and thanked her. Hearing this, the woman with a happy smile on her face said, "We are truly not worthy, Naruto-sama. Your benevolence is legendary." Naruto, smiling at the woman, said, "Hush now, my child. Your village has suffered greatly. You all are more than worthy. Now go relish in the bounty you are sure to pull from the sea and worship me." The woman, bowing, left with a large grin and burning love for Naruto. Naruto smiled watching the woman go and watched as Inari got in an argument with some of his new friends about either Naruto's breath attack or her skin. She giggled when Inari vehemently insisted that her consumption of several pounds of fish was to power up her awesome green fire. She giggled even more when his friend said all of the fish was give her the stamina to deal with all of their worship. She then watched as all of the kids decided they should ask her. Smiling as the crowd of kids surrounded her, she said, "Both of you are right. I consume so much fish and food in general because my body needs the energy to sustain the immense power in my legs and arms for long period of times. I also consume the food so that I can transform the excess energy into my atomic breath." They all had stars for eyes as Inari asked, "It's not fire?" Naruto, giggling, said, "There are two versions of the attack, Inari. One is indeed an atomic fire that burns just as hot as the sun, while the other is simply me breathing out a concentrated stream of radioactive air, again capable of melting the skin off of an elephant." All the kids awed hearing this, and Inari said, "That's awesome, Ni-chan." Chi, smiling, reached for and patted the boy on the head and said, "Yes, it is." He beamed as his hero and big sister was showing him some affection. She then, knowing that she was still hungry, said, "Go on, little ones, go play. I have some food to collect and consume." Inari, watching as his friends ran off to play knowing that they would wait for him, asked, "Are you about to transform into your kaiju form again, Ni-chan?" She, smiling softly at him, said, "No, my dear Inari. I'm going to give another of my bloodlines a try." The curious asked, "You have more than one bloodline, Ni-chan?" She, nodding and sliding her top off leaving herself in her bra, said, "I have a total of 4 bloodlines, but who knows how many more I could possibly gain. Your village was witness to my main bloodline, which I will call Kaiju Awakening. The bloodline I'm about to use to gather me some more nutrients is called Anthropomorphize." The curious asked, "What does it do?" She, giggling as she pulled down her pants revealing the shorts she was wearing as underwear, said, "Basically it allows me to transform into a humanized animal. Since I'm going to hunt for my food around here, I'll be using 1 or 2 of the 9 animals I have." He, with stars for eyes, asked, "What animal are you going to transform into?" She, sliding her Konoha headband around her neck, said, "The ultimate aquatic killing machine that is sadly nearly extinct. I'm talking about the legendary great white shark." Inari, hearing this, gained wide eyes and asked, "Really?" She, nodding, shut her eyes and tapped into the primal feeling rolling around her body. She instantly had to bite her lip as an intense pain ripped through her body. She could actually feel her body starting to change though. She shot up in height until she was easily 15 feet tall. Her skin darkened until it was actually pitch black, with her stomach, neck, inside of her arms and hands, inside of her thighs and legs, and bottom of her feet were white. A thick shark-like tail appeared behind her and swayed lazily. The signature dorsal fin of all sharks grew from her back. She, feeling her teeth disconnect from her jaw, felt herself gain a lot of weight to match that of the great white shark. She, turning to the starstruck Inari, waved to him and said, "Go play, Inari. After I eat we can talk and play." He nodding watched as she jumped into the ocean and was soon gone. This was so cool to him and he couldn't wait to tell his friends. It would be a week later and Naruto and her so-called teammate, and she used that term loosely, were ready to head back to Konoha. Naruto was literally one more session of Sakura's constant bitching from gutting the pink-haired troll and blaming Zabuza. The Uchiha thankfully was sealed in a scroll to keep him from being damaged even more from his own actions. Kakashi was nose deep in his little book and Naruto was pretty sure the man was doing so to keep from hurting Sakura. Naruto was snapped out of her thoughts by Inari handing her what looked like a card. Curious, she looked at it and couldn't stop a giggle that came out of her mouth. It was a card of her in her great white form. What made this card funny was that it had her name and some made-up stats, plus a silly attack. She, looking at him, asked, "What is this?" Inari, smiling brightly, reached into his pocket and revealed about 30 cards. He, still smiling, said, "It's called War of Monsters, or War for short. The cards are based off of you, Kakashi-san, and other people." She, curious now, looked at the card she had and noticed that it seemed to shine. He, smiling, said, "That's the limited edition Great White Shark Naruto card. It's a top-tier card that pretty much destroys all other cards." She, hearing this, asked, "Why are you giving me this?" He, smiling and revealing another card, this one of her sitting on the beach, said, "Because I have this one. It's Serenity Naruto and it's another top-tier card, along with Kaiju Naruto and Goddess Naruto. In your bag I placed one of each." She blinked hearing this and reached into her bag. She was shocked when she pulled out 3 more cards. She, looking at the 3 new cards, smiled as the Goddess Naruto was the one of her smiling and playing with the kids. Putting all 4 cards back into her bag, she leaned forward and at Inari in the middle of his forehead. She, drawing back and ignoring the intense blush on his face, said, "This is my blessing to you, Inari. I bless you with the luck of the devil. Every game you play you shall win. Every gamble you take shall pay out big time. I also bless you with the might of the Kaiju. Your strength is now 1,000 times of that it was before, and your courage knows no bound." Inari, hearing this, gained a beaming smile as he said, "Thanks, Ni-chan." She giggled and replied with, "You're welcome." She then, turning to the rest of the people of Wave and with a serene smile, said, "I bless all of you and grant you the protection of the tides." She then titled her head as the sun shined brightly on everyone in the village for a few minutes. Nodding to herself, she said, "See you later." She then took off towards Konoha, following behind Kakashi and Sakura, who had already taken off. A few miles down the road, Naruto found herself zoning out of Sakura, who was once again bitching about her Sasuke-kun. Naruto was really thinking about what kind of ramen she wanted when she got back to Konoha and the serious talk she was having with the old man. She wanted off of Team 7, not because of Kakashi, because she hated both of her supposed teammates, not to mention the Uchiha bastard had tried to use her as a human shield. Honestly, if it weren't for divine intervention, she'd be dead right now, and the bastard would also most likely be dead. She also started to think about her new family, as she hadn't really heard a word from her new sisters besides Amaya, apparently dropping off her new kimono, which she hated to admit she liked. She figured the other 2 were trying to come up with a way to approach her. Diana, on the other hand, seemed to be preparing something. Naruto wasn't quite sure what it was, but she had the feeling it was going to be big and most likely dramatic. She blinked, finding the group surrounded by Anbu. Turning to the wide-eyed Kakashi, she asked, "What the hell is going on?" The purple-haired Anbu with a cat mask walked up and said, "Naruto no Mikoto, we have been dispensed to collect you, Hada Kakashi, Haruno Sakura and the accused Uchiha Sasuke." Naruto blinked and tilted her head as she asked, "Dispensed by who?" She easily ignored the wide eyes of Kakashi and the outrage on the face of Sakura. The purple-haired Anbu said, "Lady Diana, Lady Amaya, Lady Tsukiko and Lady Satsuna." This statement made Naruto blink as she asked, "All 4 of them are in Konoha?" The purple-haired Anbu nodded and said, "Yes, and Lady Diana informed the Hokage and the village of your new status, along with what happened in Wave. They are currently awaiting Uchiha Sasuke, so he can be put on trial for attempted murder of the Princess of Destruction and Sister of Creation." Naruto, tilting her head, asked, "Princess of Destruction? When did I become the Princess of Destruction?" The purple-haired Anbu said, "If you will allow us to escort you to Konoha, I'm sure Lady Diana will gladly explain." Naruto, sighing, said, "Very well, but the old man had better be there." The purple-haired Anbu nodded and instantly Team 7 were surrounded by the 4 Anbu, with the purple-haired Anbu sticking closely to Naruto. Naruto, knowing just who the purple-haired Anbu is, gained and blushed as she was being escorted by one of her crushes. This led her to start thinking along the lines of wondering if her crush liked her and other things. This basically made her snap away from the real world. She would come back a few minutes later and find herself in seat beside Diana above the council. Shaking her head, she blinked as Sasuke had apparently been unsealed and was now being grilled by a female who looked awfully like Diana, but with stormy grey eyes. She then heard the woman ask, so you admit to trying to use one Naruto no Mikoto, formerly Naruto Uzumaki, as a human shield, and that you have not an ounce of remorse for doing so? She rolled her eyes when Sasuke, in a show of his pure stupidity, said, the dobe should be happy. She provided me the perfect cover. As an elite, it is my right to use her and the other weak whore as I see fit. Diana, hearing this, turned to the civilian council, who looked like someone had just Sparta kicked their puppy off a cliff into the abyss. She then said, there is your confession. The arrogant trash just admitted his wrongs, thus it is now time for his punishment. The eyes widened and Sakura was about to screech when Naruto, sensing what was coming, said, Sakura Haruno, if you open your mothering mouth to say a word, I swear on all things Ramen and all things good, I will gut you like the worthless piece of trash you are. Now sit down, shut your mouth and pretend for a second that the large forehead of yours does indeed hold an equally large brain. Jaws dropped, eyes widened, and Kakashi dropped his book. Diana, smiling softly at Naruto, said, I take it the pink-haired one has been grating on your nerves since wave. Naruto, nodding, said, she hasn't stopped bitching since Kakashi sealed the bastard up. Honestly, I have an headache from all of it. Diana, hearing this, said, alright Musume, we'll get finished with the things here and then I'll have your new bodyguard escort you to your new home. Naruto, hearing this, blinked several times and asked, why exactly do I need a bodyguard and what new home? Diana, smiling and turning to Sasuke, said, Uchiha Sasuke, you will be given 4 punishments. The first of your punishments will come from my eldest daughter Amaya no Mikoto. Naruto watched as the female, with a blazing aura and simmering hatred in her eyes, stood up and said, your punishment from me is that you Uchiha Sasuke will never activate your Sharingan, and even if you have children they'll never activate it. She then sat down, ignoring the wide eyes and jaw drop of the civilians. Diana said, next will come from Tsukiko no Mikoto. Naruto watched as the woman with princess curls in her hair and a suffocating hatred burning in her eyes stood up. She, looking at Sasuke with hatred, hissed, you tried to kill my new little sister. I want you dead, but mother insists that would be rewarding you. Instead, I'll take away your usage of chakra beyond that needed to live. She then sat down, ignoring the wide eyes and how Naruto was looking at her. Diana, shaking her head at how protective Tsukiko was, already said, next will be Setsuna no Mikoto. The woman from before, the one that had been grilling the Uchiha, stood up and said, I absolutely hate you. You're an arrogant piece of shit who is not only a coward but a weak little spoiled brat. Now don't get me wrong, I just don't hate you for trying to kill my sister. I hate you because you don't even the slightest remorse for your actions. Thus your punishment is to be locked up in the deepest darkest pit possible, chained to the walls and vultures feasting on your cowardly cuts. This will not kill you as you will be healed every day. Lola, anyone get this reference? Everyone flinched hearing this one, but Naruto. She simply smiled, already liking Setsuna as she had come up with a way to torture the bastard without killing him. Diana, quite shocked, said, next will be the youngest Naruto no Mikoto. Naruto, hearing this, stood up and said, I simply hate you, there's no other way around it and no sugarcoating it. I despise you with my very core and think that honestly it'd be awesome if you went to rot in a ditch somewhere, but I digress. You tried to use me as a human shield, thus your punishment is to be impaled by spears and lances every day while the vultures feast on your stomach and intestines. Not only that, but each day your senses will be jacked up so that you feel every single rip, every single stab. You feel everything with supreme clarity. She then sat back down and many people were shocked as this punishment was hell on earth. Setsuna, Amaya and Tsukiko all smiled at her. Diana, shaking her head, said, now it's my turn. She, gaining a very dark look on her face, said, my punishment for you is that you'll never be able to impregnate someone. Nor will you be able to see. The emptying of your bladder will be the most excruciating pain you've ever felt, and the voiding of your bowels will be like someone pulling out your spine through your dot. You'll never sleep again, as every time you even try to sleep, you'll have nightmares so horrible that they'll leave you bloody and broken for months. This my punishment to you, Uchiha Sasuke. Silence permeated the room hearing this final punishment be spoken. Sakura, trembling, was silently crying at this. Sasuke, with rage rolling off of him, screamed, you can't do this to me. I'm an elite. I'm an Uchiha. Diana, snorting, said, no, you are nothing, be gone. She then waved her hand and Sasuke Uchiha was gone, his just desserts finally be served to him. Naruto, turning to Diana, asked, now that he's been dealt with, what's this nonsense about an Anbu escort and new home? Setsuna said, you're a princess now, little sister, no matter how much you will deny this, it's the truth. This means that the dangers of being a princess are now going to be a constant in your life. Amaya and Tsukiko wanted to force you to retire from active service and move you to the home in heaven. I told them no, as you're a warrior and would rather die than do something like that. Mother agreed. They then tried to reason that you should have 2 entire squadrons of Anbu guarding you at all times. I reasoned with them how stupid and irritating that would be and managed to get it down to just 1. You will have 1 Anbu guarding you at all times, despite the fact that could probably handle anything thrown at you. Naruto, absorbing everything Setsuna had just said, asked which Anbu. Tsukiko and Amaya giggled and said cat. Naruto, hearing this, instantly didn't mind having an Anbu bodyguard. Diana said, as for your new home. It's what used to be the Uchiha clan estate. It's been remolded so that it looks nothing like it did before. It's also been enhanced due to your bloodline and new need to feed heavily. I left a book for you that explains the enhancements. I have also left several books and scrolls on the proper princess conduct and several books on your divine rights as a member of royalty. Please at least read over the last ones. Naruto, nodding, rubbed her temples as her headache was now roaring. She smiled softly when the cat mask Anbu appeared, looking ready for war. This made her giggle a little, as her crush was taking her job very seriously. Getting up, she asked Diana, please have some ramen delivered to my new home, as I plan on curling up into a tight ball and sleeping for the next few hours, at least until this headache is gone. She then walked out of the council chambers, the purple-haired Anbu closely following her. Diana, turning to the council, said, now for the punishment of the civilian council, 1 Haruno Sakura and Hada Kakashi. Eyes widened hearing this, and Hiruzen suddenly got the feeling that his problems were about to lessen instead of increase. Naruto, doing exactly as she had said she was, could now be found curled up in her very large bed that her color scheme printed on it. All of the lights were off and Naruto was down to her night clothes. The Anbu, still wearing her mask, was in the shadows of the room, kinda being a creep but doing her job of being Naruto's bodyguard. The woman behind the mask, one Yuzuki Yugao, was trying her hardest not to just stare at Naruto with unlove, but damn if the girl wasn't gorgeous and now princess. Yugao, cutting her eyes to the window, could see the sun starting to set, meaning night would soon be here. She wondered if Naruto would wake up for something to eat or if the girl would just sleep through until tomorrow. She, shifting her eyes back to Naruto, watched as the girl gently started to gnaw on her pillow. It would be adorable if it weren't for the fact that the pillow was slowly being shredded like fresh meat. This terrified her, as if Naruto went to give her a hickey or tried to bite her during, it could rip her apart, literally. She, sighing, hated to wake Naruto up, but the newborn goddess did need to eat a lot of food to sustain her incredible powers. Walking over, she gently started to shake the girl. Naruto, waking up, instantly sat up and yawned, ignoring the feathers stuck to her mouth for the moment. Yugao, on the other hand, giggled as the feathers stuck to Naruto's face gave her an even more adorable look. Naruto, ignoring the giggling of her escort, and wondered what time it was. She, cutting her golden eyes to the window, blinked as it was just getting dark. Apparently she had slept for 5 hours, as it was still midday when they had arrived in the village. Getting out of her much more comfortable bed, she asked, was the ramen delivered? Yugao, shaking her head, said, no, my princess. Naruto, hearing this, sighed just as her stomach roared. She knew that she needed to eat but didn't want to venture into the village until all of the bullshit, her new status and the punishment of the Uchiha, had blown away. She, grabbing one of the books about the enhancements her new home had gone through, flipped through several pages until she came across the one about how the back door functioned as a transporter. It could take her to any of the 8 pocket dimensions which had been set up by her sisters and mother to be teeming with prey species for her to eat. This would explain why the ramen wasn't sent, she had her own food now. Setting the book down for later, she walked into the bathroom and changed into her regular clothes. She, walking out, slipped her headband around her neck and said, I'm about to go out on a hunt, cat-san. Yugao, hearing this, blinked and asked where. Naruto, shaking the rest of her sleepiness out of her, said, the back door is in transporter to 8 pocket dimensions that haven been set up into different environments for me to hunt the abundant prey species my mother and sisters set up for me. Yugao, understanding now, said, I am ready to follow you, Lady Naruto. Naruto, rolling her eyes, said, you can just call me Naruto, you know. Yugao giggled and said, I can't, as it is my job to protect you. Naruto rolled her eyes even more and headed towards the back door, already having a clue on what she wanted to eat and where to hunt. She, pressing her hand gently on the door, blinked when suddenly she was in a pure white room standing across from Amaya. Said goddess blinked, spotting her little sister, as she expected her to still be asleep, as she and the others were still locked in a heated debate with the civilian council and Haruno Sakura. The pink-haired girl insisted that she was only trying to help Naruto, but Setsuna wasn't having any of that horseshit. The civilians were more normal, as they were begging, pleading, and even trying to bribe their way out of the justified punishment. Naruto, confused, asked Amaya-san. Amaya, shaking her head, waved her hand and the room transformed into Naruto's bedroom in the home up in heaven. Naruto, finding herself seated on a massive bed, blinked and looked around. She, looking at the walls, smiled as her color scheme could be seen here, along with her more insane plans. This included her plan to accidentally kill the cat known as Tora and blame it on the team. She could also see many of the toys she had always wanted when she was younger and the black eyeliner she had pilfered from that bitchy elder. Amaya smiling said, "Welcome dearest little sister to your royal room up in heaven. You can call this place whatever you like, as I call my room the war room." Naruto hearing this nodded and asked, "Why am I here?" Amaya sighing said, "It was decided someone would need to talk to you about your princess duties and the other things being a princess entails. We knew you wasn't going to read the books and scrolls, so I decided to be the one to inform you. Also, we need you to know that in any environment you decide to go to, you're the ultimate predator. This pretty much means that anything and everything is on the menu. Now then, as a princess." She then went on a long-winded speech that Naruto forced herself to listen to. Amaya finishing said most of that stuff was trivial, but there are some important things in there. Like for instance, as a princess you're allowed to have as many concubines as you like. Another is that you're allowed to have a massive harem if you so wished. The most important one is that if you make a law, it is to be adhered without hesitation. Naruto understanding all of this asked, "Is there anything else?" Amaya not wanting to head back to the debate nodded. Naruto blinked and found herself in Amaya's arms as the goddess of the sun, and flames hugged her tightly and cloaked the both of them in a warmth Naruto had never felt before. This made Naruto nuzzle into the extremely warm hug. Amaya feeling this said, "This isn't just a regular hug, dear sister. I'm giving you another bloodline." Naruto hearing this nuzzled even deeper into the hug and said, "I don't care. This is the absolute best hug I've ever been given." Amaya giggled and said, "That would be due my natural warmth." She nuzzling Naruto's head said, "The bloodline I'm giving you is called Aura of the Sun. It basically allows you to harness the power of the sun and all flames. In fact, if it can be considered a heat source, then you can harness it. You'll never be cold unless you want to be, and raging blizzard will just feel like a rainy day." Naruto nodding to the words she was hearing asked, "Why wasn't the ramen delivered?" Amaya said, "Because we're still in a debate with the wretched civilians and your former teammate." Naruto hearing this blinked and asked, "Former?" Amaya smiling said, "Mother," after hearing how the girl defended her heinous actions, struck down the notion of Team 7 and removed you from it post-haste. She didn't remove you from the ninja program in general. In fact, we were working on getting you Anko Mitarashi as your sensei and you her apprentice." Naruto hearing this giggled, as she and Anko already created all kinds of hell now. If she became the apprentice of Anko, then the world had better watch out. Amaya giggling also said, "Your Jiji actually pleaded with us to not do that as he couldn't handle the amount of paperwork that would cause." Naruto giggled even more, as the old man did have a burning hatred for the stacks of paper known as paperwork. Amaya said, "So instead we got Utsune's Senju, who is on her way back to the village as we speak, will be your sensei. This means you'll have to learn some medical ninjutsu." Naruto hearing this shrugged and said, "That's fine, as I've always wanted to learn how to heal people so that I can help Konohamaru and his friends whenever they get hurt doing something I would do." Amaya laughed and asked, "You do realize that you just proclaimed that the things you do are dangerous?" Naruto laughing said, "Of course the things I do are dangerous, but they're also crazy, inane, adventurous, and most importantly fun." Amaya chuckled hearing this, but then sighed as it seemed it was time for her to get back to the debate. She ending the hug said, "I have to go back in. Have fun on your hunt and don't aim small." Naruto nodded and blinked as she was once again at her back door, her hand still pressed to it. Cracking her neck, she decided that she was going with a Serengeti as she wondered what zebra tasted like. 2 hours later and Naruto could be seen in her lioness form slowly creeping up on an entire herd of zebra. She liked this form as it tapped into her primal needs, and her hunger was roaring. All of her senses were heightened and her muscles felt more powerful than before. Seeing her could already taste the zebra. Her nose then twitched, catching the scent of yugao up in one of the trees a good distance away. She could also smell the male lions roaming the area like they owned the place. She didn't really care just as long as they didn't with her hunt. Her perfect chance then arrived and she sprung out of the grass and latched onto the neck of the zebra she was inches from. She taking it down within 2 seconds, used a burst of speed and a jump to take down another one, avoiding its deadly kicks with the ease of a ninja. She having now killed 2 zebra took off running and went for the 3rd kill. She managing to strike it down also roared in victory. Shaking her head, she dragged the 3rd body over to her other 2 and sat down to eat. She halfway through the 1st zebra looked up to spot the 2 male lions heading her way. She getting up growled, not liking that these 2 were about to try to weasel their way into her meal. She standing to her full height stared the 2 down. They didn't seem to get the message that she wasn't sharing as they approached. She didn't even hesitate to jump into action. In a matter of seconds she had her jaw clamped down on the of one of the male lions pressing down, while the other was slowly bleeding out not feet from her meal. The 2 male lions stood no chance in hell against her, as she was a trained kunoichi who killed for a living. She finished with the now dead 2nd male lion, moved back to her meal, and went back to eating her well-deserved meal. She, ignoring the whimpering of the still dying first male lion, finished 2 out of her 3 zebra and then moved on to the dead male lion. She started with his lower body and continued to eat her way up until all that was left was the head and mane of the mighty beast. She, looking at the other lion and her last zebra, decided that she was going to freeze the zebra and leave the male for the scavengers. Shaking her head, she stood up and grabbed the zebra. She smiled when it was transported back to her home. Running towards where her bodyguard was seated, Naruko enjoyed the feeling of the grass crunching underneath her padded feet. She loved the feeling of the crisp night air running through her fur and flowing through her hair. She, reaching the tree Yugao was perched and shifted back into her human form and giggled as Yugao was being played with by a family of monkeys. Naruko found this funny as it reminded her of her situation with Konohamaru and his friends. Granted, Konohamaru could speak perfect English and wouldn't throw his shit at you. She, letting a little of her aura come to light, watched as the monkeys scattered. Climbing up the tree, she sat down beside Yugao and asked, "Are you ready to go back?" Yugao, shaking her no, said, "Not yet. This setting is peaceful and there's no one trying to seduce or kill you here." Naruko, nodding, sat back in the tree branch and started to hum a lovely tune. She, humming this tune, didn't even notice when Yugao turned to stare at her, wondering where she learned this tune. Naruko, feeling deeply at peace, continued to hum the lovely tune, ignoring when she literally started to glow and nature started to surround her and bloom. Yugao noticed though and could see the lion cubs playing around the tree they were in. She could also see that the monkeys were back and one was even sitting in Naruko's lap. Naruko, opening her mouth a little, said, "Because there's got to be something out there. If I fly high enough, I'll find it somewhere. So I'll hold my breath until I float away. Maybe I'll come down someday." Yugao gained hearts for eyes hearing this and pictured Naruko someday singing lovely songs to their children. Naruko, opening her eyes, blinked, spotting all of the wildlife around her. She, looking down at her lap, could spotting the baby monkey taking a nap in her lap. To her, this was the most adorable thing she'd ever seen, and she wondered if someday this would be hers and Yugao's child. She then giggled as she could already see their child. Their firstborn would be a little girl with her hair and Yugao's eyes. She then pictured their second child, and it would be a headstrong little boy with Yugao's hair and her eyes. Their daughter would have the hardest time trying to keep her little brother out of trouble, and Naruko would just giggle as she nursed their third child, which would be another girl. Of course, Naruko would be wearing the Hokage hat by then, and Yugao would be retired from the Anbu Corps. She giggled as a retired Yugao would most likely be a very bored person, and that would lead to lots of and plenty of baby making. She, shaking her head to get out of the daydream state she was in, picked up the monkey and sit him down in the tree. She, jumping down, said, "Come on Anbu-san, let's go back home." Yugao, nodding, jumped down and said, "You can call me by my name, Princess Naruko." Naruko, giggling, watched as their portal home appeared and said, "I know this, Yu-chan, but I like calling you Anbu-san." She then walked into the portal, followed closely by a beaming Yugao. 2 days later, and Naruko was relaxing in her kitchen as Yugao was on another mission. Naruko had her 3 little brats as acting bodyguards. Of course, she also had some Anbu actually guarding her, as Konohamaru, Mogi and Yuden were here more for her to play with, spoil. She, hearing Konohamaru enjoy the pool in her backyard, moved over to the pot she had on the stove. She was cooking her 3 brats a wonderful lunch. Of course, Ino was also coming over later for lunch. Naruko, smiling, stirred the moose and rattlesnake stew. There were other things in the stew, but she knew that the main components were moose and rattlesnake. She, smelling it, knew that it needed to cook more. Reaching into her cabinet, she pulled down some fruit. This fruit was fresh as she and Ino had picked it just yesterday when Team 10 had been requested by her to guard her. She, chopping the apples and the pears down, added them into the stew, along with some red peppers and onions. She, stirring the pot, smiled as it smelled wonderful. Turning, she moved over to the salad she was preparing to go with the stew and pondered on when she should start going out on missions again. She turned, hearing footsteps approaching. A brilliant smile blossomed on her face, spotting Ino walk in. She and Ino had actually taken their friendship a step further while picking fruit and were now a couple. Ino was her bae and she was Ino's boo. Ino, a little pissed off that her former friend Sakura had tried to weasel her way into her quality time with Naruko, sat down on the bar stool Naruko had set up at the island in her kitchen. Ino sighed peacefully as the smell of whatever Naruko was cooking hit her nose. Naruko, being able to tell that Ino was upset, opened her mouth and sang, "I found a love for me. Darling, just dive right in. Follow my lead. I found a girl, beautiful and sweet. I never knew that you were the someone waiting for me. We were just kids when we fell in love. Not knowing what it was. I will not give you up this time. Darling, just me slow. Your heart is all I own. In your eyes you're holding mine." Ino swooned and picked up with "Baby, I'm dancing in the dark with you between my arms. Barefoot on the grass, listening to our favorite song. When you said you looked a mess, I whispered underneath my breath, but you heard it. Darling, you look perfect tonight." Naruko, grabbing Ino's hand and slowly swaying, continued with, "I found a woman. Stronger than anyone I know. She shares my dreams, I hope that someday I'll share her home. I found a lover, to carry more than just my secrets. To carry love, to carry children of our own. Ino with a serene smile on her face said we are still kids, but we're so in love. Fighting against all odds. I know we'll be alright this time. Darling, just hold my hand, be my girl, I'll be your man. I see my future in your eyes. Babby. Naruko, now feeling the three brats now inside, knew that the audience had widened as she said, dancing in the dark, with you between my arms. Barefoot on the grass. Listening to our favorite song. When I saw you in that dress, looking so beautiful. I don't deserve this, darling, you look perfect tonight. Ino with hearts for eyes and now swooning, placed her head on Naruko's neck as the two of them danced to the incredible song the entire estate was hearing. Naruko spinning, Ino picked up with baby, I'm dancing in the dark. With you between my arms. Barefoot on the grass. We're listening to our favorite song. I have faith in what I see. Now I know I have met an angel in person. She looks perfect. I don't deserve this, you look tonight. The song now finished and Ino was in paradise. She looking Naruko in the eyes leaned forward and two had their first. Mogi cheered as this was amazing. Konohamaru wiping the tears from his eyes tried to put on a brave front like he wasn't crying at the super romantic scene he had just witnessed. Yuden on the other hand had no problem crying as to him the scene he had just witnessed was confirmation that his One-chan was a hopeless romantic. Naruko ending the because Ino was starting to lose her air giggled and asked, did you enjoy the performance, Gigi? The old Hokage walking into the home along with the returned Yugao chuckled and said, indeed I did, Naruko. I'm so happy that Konoha's Princess of Destruction is such a hopeless romantic. Naruko sticking her tongue out at him said, you're just mad that no one in their right mind would sew something like this for you. He rolling his eyes sat down at one of the stools and asked what's cooking. Naruko setting her eyes on Yugao who was extremely jealous of Ino said lunch. Don't worry Yu-chan, once we start dating you'll get a super romantic scene like this. Yugao hearing this went from being jealous to being excited. Naruko laughed sensing this. She turned to her stew and smiled and said, it's ready. Time for lunch. The three kids hearing this were instantly seated and had bowls in front of them, adoring Naruko's cooking. Ino back seated was in the same state as the kids, as Naruko had gotten her eating right with the food she cooked. Yugao also seated had removed her mask and was ready for the pure deliciousness that was Naruko's cooking. Sarutobi seated also planned on eating a hearty lunch before getting back to the evil known as paperwork and waiting for Tsune to arrive. Naruko giggling served everyone a healthy portion of her stew, along with the salad she had prepared. Sitting down herself she smiled and said enjoy. This was the cue for everyone to dig into the meals. Seconds later both Ino and Yugao moaned from how scrumptious the food was. The three kids followed the two women seconds later and Konohamaru started to float. The next day and Naruko was happy as she was once again an active ninja of the village as her new sensei had finally arrived in the village. Tsune had instantly wanted to know everything she could about Naruko and said princess had been happy to help. Now Naruko was learning the healing arts of shinobi and so far could heal a fish. It wasn't a lot of progress, but considering that she had started in just a day it was something. Right now Naruko was preparing for a mission as Tsune, realizing that Naruko was way too talented for the chores known as D-rank missions, had gotten her a C-rank mission. It is Bandit Camp mission. Naruko was to wipe it completely out and Naruko felt that this gave her the perfect chance to use her power of destruction and entity bloodline. Depending on how many bandits there were she might use her entity bloodline. She turned to Konohamaru and said alright Kono, keep an eye on the house, eat the meals I've prepared for you and make sure Ino eats her lunch. Konohamaru nodding said, you got it boss. She giggled and walked out of her home. She blinked spotting her loyal Anbu-guard girlfriend standing by the door. Yugao with a small smile on her face handed Naruko the folder holding the info with her mission. She leaning forward captured Yugao in a tender, loving the fact that she was 6 feet tall and had the height advantage over both of her girlfriends. In fact she had the height advantage over most people, including her sensei. Granted Tsunade had her when it came to size, but that was okay, as when Tsunade started talking about boring shit Naruko would just stare at those brawlers and imagine what it would be like to squeeze said objects. Shaking her head she walked towards the gate to get started on her mission. 2 days later and Naruko was rubbing her temples as the info was outdated. Not only had the single bandit camp expanded, but now was under the leadership of several missing ninja from Kumo and Iwa. She had taken out several of the smaller bandit camps using some of her normal ninja skills. She was literally a mile away from the next camp and she had an headache. She being able to smell the missing ninja from here, placed her hand on the ground and used a pulsive chakra to get a layout of the camp. Her eyes widened spotting the many bandits. This camp was packed and she didn't like it. Standing up she figured it was time for some destruction. She closing her eyes searched through the maze that was her mind and found the pure destruction that was her bloodline. Smiling, she moaned a little as the power of destruction was like ramen, Ino's extremely able and Yugao's spicy tuna roll. It was damn addictive and she felt like she was getting high off of it. Shaking her head, she started to walk forward, ignoring when small black balls of pure destruction started to appear around her. She walking into the bandit camp watched as the many thugs and bandits turned to her. One of the more idiotic thugs ed his and said, "Oh look boys, something to play with." Naruto, ignoring this obvious statement, lifted up her hand and said, "I'll give you this one chance to give up." Another bandit laughing said, "Yeah right. She sighed and focused the power of destruction around her, creating a pitch black aura around herself. She staring the wide-eyed bandits in the eyes said, "Get ready to die fools." She lifting her hand up created several balls of black energy. She lowering her hand said, "Destruction style. Beyond the grave jutsu." The 12 balls of destruction quickly became 10,000. These balls of pure destruction shifted until they were shaped like bullets. The thugs and bandits only had time to shit their pants before the bullets came raining down like raindrops. Naruto, not even flinching, walked on his people and places started to be obliterated, leaving nothing but gaping holes. Naruto shut her eyes and moaned as she could feel each bullet land and could feel it devour all that it touched. It was euphoric, and Naruto could already tell it was gonna be like her precious ramen. Shaking her head, she placed her hand on the ground and groaned as apparently there was one last camp to slaughter, and this looked to be the largest. Standing back up, she shook her head as after this camp she would be finished and could get back to her wonderful home and her lovely girlfriends. This brought a serene smile to her face, as her lovely girlfriends were most likely busy doing their own missions or training their off. Hopefully a little of both, as Ino did need to get stronger, and the only way to do so was to train. Yugao also wanted to get stronger, and Naruto figured she could do so by training extra hard, plus plenty of missions. Shaking her, Naruto jumped into the air and vanished, leaving the smoking remains of what was once a bandit camp behind. 2 hours later and Naruto was staring at the last bandit camp and she wasn't impressed. This camp was the largest camp she had ever seen, with over 500 bandits and thugs roaming around. Of course the missing ninja were the leaders of the camp. She, not feeling like dealing with this many idiots, created several clones and had them spread out. Her plan was to surround the camp and activate her entity bloodline. She, feeling that her clones had the place surrounded, pulled out a kunai and cut the palm of her hand. Knowing that her clones were doing the same, she let the blood drop onto the ground below. All of her clones did the same. She, feeling that the perimeter was now sealed by her blood, activated her bloodline. She felt darkness overtake her senses, but she quickly called out summoning jutsu. The shape. Suddenly the bandit camp transformed into a large area with many housed and several hooks. Naruto could see a playground in the distance, alone with what looked some hedges. She then blinked as something informed her that this place was called Haddonfield. She then witnessed her killer appear. She shivered as he was a creep in the worst way. Shaking her head, she started to whisper things to the creep, ordering him to murder and sacrifice the idiots that belonged in the camp. He did nothing but started to move forward. He quickly came across a group of 4 idiots and sliced them one by one until they were all badly bleeding as they fled for their lives. She giggled as the looks on their faces was priceless. She then witnessed her summon literally shrug off several high-powered jutsu. She found this interesting, as if someone had thrown that many powerful attacks at her, she'd be in trouble right now. She felt her jaw drop when her summon actually grabbed one of the missing ninja and put him directly on a hook. She moaned as her being the entity meant that the fools were being fed directly to her. It was near orgasmic, feeling the souls draining into her. This effect was increased when her summon hooked more of the fools. Since they had no clue on what to do or how to help their friends, they were screwed, and she was stuck in a near orgasmic state for quite some time. She growled when one of the higher powered missing ninja managed to unhook himself. She, turning to the shape, whispered into his ear to murder this one as he dared to unhook himself. She laughed as the missing ninja begged and pleaded for his life as all of his minions and friends were slowly being fed to her. The shape picked this one up and stabbed him, ending his wretched life. She then shut her eyes as the rest died on the hooks. She did have an orgasm from this, as the influx of people and souls being fed to her was supreme. When she opened her eyes, the shape was gone and her bloodline was off. She, looking down at her body, sighed as she needed to get home and change panties, as the ones she was wearing were soaked. Turning around, she blinked as she swore she could feel someone behind her. Slowly turning, she activated her kaiju eyes. She found herself eye to eye hole with 2 groups of hunter ninja. One was from Kumo with their cloud-like insignia sitting proudly on the headband. The other group was from Iwa, as the rock symbol could be seen. Naruto, wondering if she should be worried about these guys, was about to turn and unleash an atomic breath on them when she remembered about her situation. Sighing, she turned back in the direction of Konoha and said, "For I am the entity. Devourer of souls and summoner of the wretched, the damned, the doomed, the forsaken. My name is Princess Naruto Strange, otherwise known as Naruto no Mikoto, or the Princess of Destruction. It would do ye mortals well to remember this." She then, creating a single ball of destruction, coated it in her atomic flames, tossed it over her shoulder, not intending to hit any of the hunter ninja. She, hearing a massive explosion, vanished as nuclear green flames consumed what was once a thriving bandit camp. 3 days later, and Naruto, taking a break from being a badass princess, was sitting on her purple float in her bikini with black shades on her face. Said float was smack dab in the middle of her pool. Floating not far from her was her new pet. Apparently her actions had once again put the fear of Kami into Kumo and Iwa. This got the old man to sign all of the papers she needed to get herself in pet. Of course, she teaching said old man and her sensei to defeating the evil known as paperwork most likely had something to do with it. Her new pet was a present from Satsuna, and it was a baby hydra. Naruto had no clue how Satsuna got a hold of this legendary beast, but she didn't care as she finally had a pet. Of course, said pet was very protective and tended to hiss at anyone she didn't know. Yugao was out on a mission as apparently the Fire Lord had no clue about the bandit camps and now had placed a mission to scout for any more. Naruto, reaching forward, grabbed her strawberry lemonade and gin drink and took a sip. She had discovered her love for this mix after a long day dealing with the idiotic council. Apparently the civilians still thought they had control over her as they had tried to force her to marry several women and men. She had slapped the hell out of a lot of them for this, and Tsunade had handed her a nice drink. Naruto, sighing in peace, had no clue how the old man dealt with the bottom feeders known as the Civilian Council. She blinked when her little Alexandria hissed loudly. Looking up, she giggled, spotting Ino in a bikini. Ino, rolling her eyes as she had already met Alexandria several times, placed her towel down and climbed into the pool. She, swimming over to the hydra, gently pet her. Alexandria, going from hissing at Ino to nuzzling her hand, instantly recognized the blonde-haired woman who feed her fish. Naruto, giggling as her pet nuzzled one of her girls, watched as Ino swam over to her and asked, "Since when did you start drinking?" Naruto, giving Ino a gentle on the said, "Since the imbecilic Civilian Council tried to make me marry several women and men." Ino, hearing this, scowled and asked, "Did my dad do anything about that?" Naruto, chuckling, said, "Your dad informed them that you and I were dating, and then when they said so, told them to go rot in a ditch somewhere." Ino giggled hearing this and asked, "Why are they so stupid?" Naruto, shrugging, said, "Because being an idiot is free and easy, while being a productive member of society is hard and expensive." Ino then laughed as a truer statement had never been uttered. Ino then, kicking back into the pool, started to float as she told Naruto and Alexandria about the last mission her team went on. Naruto laughing as Ino revealed to her that she pissed her pants when a cat snuck up on her. Ino, glaring at Naruto, said, "It's not funny." Naruto, with a hand over her mouth trying to stop her giggling, said, "No Ino, it's hilarious." Ino rolled and shut her eyes, deciding to float. Naruto blinked when out of her home came both Tsunade and Shizune. Both females were wearing bikini. Naruto nearly had an heart attack spotting Tsunade in her bikini as the damn glorious orbs she had were nearly visible. She, cutting her eyes to Ino, could see that her blonde-haired Wonder Woman was trying and failing to hold back a nosebleed. Alexandria, already liking Tsunade and Shizune, made a pleased sound and using her tail paddled over to the two women and nuzzled them. Shizune, giggling, picked up the hydra and said, "Hello Alexandria, you're looking lovely." Alexandria nuzzled Shizune while Tsunade slipped into the pool. The blonde-haired woman sighed and the cooling water of the pool soothed the aches in her muscles and bones. Naruto, watching as the water eased the gravity off of the brawlers Tsunade called, shook her head and asked, "So what are you doing here, sensei, Shizune?" Shizune, smiling, said, "The Chunin exams are coming up in about 2 weeks. We're officially here to ask you if you would like to participate." Naruto, blinking, asked, "Will the Chunin exams have strong people to fight?" Tsunade, rolling her eyes, said, "Yes Brad, there will be strong people to fight." Naruto, eye smiling, said, "Then I'm in." Ino, rolling her eyes, asked, "Did you get the bingo book this week, Tsunade-sama?" Shizune, blinking, said, "Actually we did, we were given it by Anko-san saying that we should check it out." Naruto and Ino were curious about this. Tsunade, reaching into her coat, grabbed the little black book known as the bingo book and opened it. Flipping through it, she found most of the ones she was used to. Sighing, she was about to close the book when she came across an entry that made her gasp. She, looking up at Naruto, asked, "How in the nine hells did you become the first genin to be entered in the bingo book?" Naruto, blinking, asked, "Sensei, say what now?" Tsunade, handing her the bingo book, revealed an image of her from her mission with green flames burning in front of her. Her eyes widened and she asked, "What in the name of the Kyuubi's furry?" Ino, leaning over her shoulder, gasped and asked, "Why in the hell are you named the Princess of Destruction?" Naruto, turning to Ino, said, "Because of my bloodline, the power of destruction." She then, turning back to the page, read what they listed about her. She snorted as they had wrote down what she had said, word for word. It's like they didn't have an original bone in their body. Shaking her head, she smiled and said, "They listed me as in B rank threat but still gave me and flee on side order." Ino asked, "You have a summon?" Naruto, turning to Ino, said, "Actually I have several." The one they're talking about is called the Shape and he's part of one of my bloodlines. He's a ruthless cold-blooded killer who would make Orochimaru of the Sand and beg for his mommy. All eyes widened hearing this, and Tsunade asked why in the nine hells do you have a summon like that? Naruto shrugging said because during the mission to Wave I managed to broker several summoning contracts along with a bloodline before I accepted becoming the youngest Strange. Ino hearing this asked yeah I've been meaning to ask you about your last name. Why Strange? Naruto giving Ino a plain look asked you don't think my family is strange? Ino blinked and asked that's why you went with the last name Strange. Naruto nodding said yes. Ino wasn't the only who gained a sweat drop. Naruto ignoring this picked up her drink and scowled as it was empty. Snapping her fingers she blinked when her glass was refilled. Curious she asked what just happened. She blinked when the voice of Tsukiko could be heard saying your divine authority happened dear sister. Naruto turning smiled as Tsukiko was now sitting in a beach chair by the pool, in a bikini. Naruto asked what do you mean divine authority? Tsukiko sighing said you're the daughter of a primordial and the sister of 3 goddesses, thus by default you have a divine authority. Naruto was about to ask when Satsuna's voice could be heard saying not to mention that if you're ever killed in battle, you'll transcend your mortal chains and become a divine. Naruto turning found Satsuna in a bikini sipping on a Long Island iced tea. Ino seeing where Naruto got her amazing body from asked Naruto is going to be a god. Amaya appearing rubbing sunscreen in her skin, said no my future sister-in-law. Naruto is already a goddess. She is simply in human form waiting for the correct catalyst to ascend. Said catalyst is most likely a glorious death in a battle worthy of godhood. Naruto blinking several times asked what is this pool party day? Diana appearing in another lawn chair reading a book giggled and said yes Naru-chan it is. Naruto hearing this answer sweat dropped. Shaking her head she snapped her fingers and smiled when Konohamaru, Mogi and Yuden all appeared in their swimwear. Konohamaru blinking looked around but smiled as they were no longer stuck in Iruka's boring lecture. Mogi giggling said thanks Ni-chan. Naruto waving the thanks off still felt like something was missing. She then feeling Yugao enter the village from her mission smirked and snapped her fingers. Yugao blinked finding herself in her bikini floating on a heart-shaped float in Naruto's huge pool. Turning she smiled spotting said goddess, along with several others. Naruto giggling said now all that we're missing is someone cooking some food and some music and we'll be having a party. Diana snapping her fingers said got it covered. A poof of smoke occurred and suddenly summertime music could be heard as a white-haired, big-head woman manned the turntables. Food could then be smelled cooking as an somewhat angry black-haired woman appeared. Naruto blinking asked who are they? Satsuna waving her hand, made an image of the white-haired woman serving drinks at a bar, said providing us with music is Marahin Strauss, S-class mage from the guild fairy tale. Mother and I knowing your attraction to powerful but kind women, decided to start helping you woo her and many others from her reality. Naruto hearing this blinked several times and then gave Satsuna a plain look. Satsuna recognizing the look said don't worry we're not brainwashing them or anything. You'll still have to work your off to impress them. We've just set up some things that should help. Naruto sighing turned to Tsukiko who giggled and said this woman is the unhappy housewife Kai Kai and she's from a reality I quite frankly want you to take over and make your own. Naruto hearing this blinked several times and asked why would you want that? Tsukiko giving Naruto a gorgeous smile said because once you ascend you're going to need somewhere you rule with an iron fist. This place would make the perfect kaiju playground, plus there's strong fighters for you. Naruto hearing strong fighters gained a brilliant smile of her own. Yugao giggling at this asked why is she unhappy? Tsukiko giggling said because her husband is too busy training to take care of her needs and desires. Naruto shaking her head said how foolish. If she were mine, we'd be cuddling right now. Ino quirking an eyebrow asked really? I'm one of yours and we're not cuddling. Naruto giving a very arousing smirk said that's because you're way over there instead of right next to me, or better yet on top of me. Ino blushed hearing this while Amaya rolled her eyes and said that was supremely cheesy Naru-chan. Satsuna a little jealous of Ino and Yugao said hush Amaya, you're just jealous because no one wants to do that with you. Amaya scowled hearing this but stayed silent. Konohamaru noticing something asked boss, why are all of the members of your family like super gorgeous and built? Diana turning a page in her book said I can answer this. It's because as goddesses we're meant to inspire desire to men and women of all species. Thus our bodies automatically replicates the desired traits and we become it. Tsunade hearing this asks so Naruto looks like an actress because she's supposed to be attractive. Diana nodding said yes. Right now you, Shizune, Ino and Yugao are all extremely aroused and attracted to all 4 of us. If the 3 kids weren't here you'd probably try to jump us but end up being dominated and marked by Naru-chan. Everyone blinked hearing this and Tsunade asked what makes you so sure she'd dominate me? All four goddesses gave her a plain look and Tsukiko asked, what makes you so sure she wouldn't? Tsunade smirking said I'm a cage-level kunoichi. Amaya rolling her eyes said Naruto is a god-level kunoichi who could exterminate this entire planet if she wanted to. All eyes widened hearing this, well those belonging to mortals. Naruto knowing she was very strong didn't know she was that powerful. Ino with wide eyes asked are you really that strong Naruto? Naruto shrugging said I have no clue Ino, but chances are that I am. The jaws dropped hearing this and Tsunade asked remind me again, why are you a genin with that kind of power? Diana giggling said because she wants to climb the ranks normally and become Hokage. Naruto nodded to this statement and picked up her drink. Taking a sip she said I. Everyone's sweat dropped hearing this. The party then picked back up and everyone laughed. End meetings. 3 days later and Naruto was at a training ground working on creating an actual attack with her power of destruction. It was proving most difficult as destruction didn't want to be shaped or molded. She was dressed in a pair of shorts and a sports bra. Tsunade and Shizune were at the hospital taking care of some dumbass ninja who had gotten beat up by a pissed Konohamaru. They should have known better as he was her little brother and she had given him the kaiju awakening bloodline. She wasn't sure what kaiju he was, but she knew it was most likely deadly. She sighing decided to take a break. Sitting down she summoned her teacup from her home. She was about to snap her fingers and have it filled when it was filled up by a kettle. Looking up she smiled spotting Tsukiko dressed in what looked like training gear. Tsukiko giggling sat down after pouring herself a cup of tea. Naruto taking a small sip of her tea, sighed as it was her favorite kind. She asked not that I'm not glad to see you, but what's up? She with a smile on her face said we learned that Amaya gave you another bloodline. Naruto remembering said bloodline said yeah it's actually pretty cool, specifically when I go on night hunts or that one time I searched that entire desert for that one little lizard. Tsukiko giggled remembering said event and asked would you like another one? Naruto hearing this questions actually thought about it. She asked would this new bloodline be from you? Tsukiko nodding said yes. Naruto rubbing her chin asked would this new bloodline be as difficult as the power of destruction is proving to be right now? Tsukiko shaking her head said heavens no. Naruto asked would this bloodline make me even more powerful? Tsukiko nodding said oh yes. Naruto curious asked where would this new bloodline hail from? Tsukiko giggling said the same place Murahin hails from. This statement really piqued Naruto's interest. Taking another sip of her tea she asked, would you tell me about said place so I can be prepared when I eventually travel there? Tsukiko nodding started to indeed tell her little sister about the dimension Murahin was from. Naruto with wide eyes asked are the mages strong? Tsukiko nodding said Murahin herself is an S-class mage, but doesn't participate in quest anymore. Naruto hearing this smiled as a potential love was actually powerful. Spotting that her tea was empty, she refilled it along with the cup of her sister. Tsukiko thanking her said the bloodline I would be giving you would be like that of her friend Natsu. It wouldn't exactly be Dragon Slayer magic, but would be more like God Slayer or Biju Slayer magic. Naruto hearing this blinked and asked why can't it be Dragon Slayer magic? Tsukiko giving her a smile said dear sister you're basically a dragon with most of your kaiju forms. Hell when you unlock your King Ghidorah form you literally be a 3-headed dragon, so being a Dragon Slayer would meaning being able to slay yourself. Naruto hearing this asked so what you're saying is that I'm already a Dragon Slayer? Tsukiko thinking about this nodded and said I guess in a way you are. Anyway your new bloodline will actually have 2 parts. The first of course coming from the dimension of Murahin. The second part comes from this dimension and will help you with illusions. Basically you will be able to harness the illusionary prowess of the moon, giving you the literal ability to bend reality to your will. Naruto whistled hearing this ability and giggled as it would help her with her crush on Yuhi Kurenai, as the woman was known as the Jinjutsu mistress for a reason. Tsukiko smiling said now then I'd love to spend more time with Yunari-chan, but sadly I have the cursed paperwork to deal with. She then vanished with a glint of silver. Naruto smiled as that was kind of a cool way to vanish. She getting up waved her hand as her teacup vanished. Cracking her knuckles she decided break time was over and got back to her intense training. 3 hours later and Naruto no closer to her goal had decided to call it day as she was supposed to be resting up for the Chunin exams in 2 days anyway. Grabbing her gear she was about to head home when Yugao in her official Anbu gear appeared. Curious she asked what's up Anbu-san? Yugao responded with Hokage-sama and the council have requested your presence. She hearing this groaned wondering what the infernal civilians wanted with her now. Shaking her head she activated her divine authority and changed from her training gear into her fancy kimono. Now dressed she said alright let's go, but so help me God if the civilians try anything I'll flay them alive. The Anbu nodded and vanished taking Naruto along with them. Appearing in the council chambers, Naruto blinked spotting a very wide blonde-haired Kumo Kunoichi. Curious she blinked when Hiruzen said she's here now kindly explain your purpose here Samui-san. Samui nodding reached into her pocket and pulled out a scroll. She setting her deep grey eyes on Naruto said Naruto strange for taking out 4 of our missing ninja the Raikage has granted you diplomatic immunity. Everyone blinked hearing this and Naruto asked really that's all I get for taking out 4 Kumo missing ninja. Samui shaking her head said you misunderstand me my lady. As a princess you already have diplomatic immunity. He's just confirming it so that no Kumo ninja will mistake you for an enemy and attack. Naruto rolled her eyes and asked is that the only reason I'm here because if it is, your Raikage and I will have to have a long talk. Hiruzen hearing this and knowing that Naruto meant she'd be hurting the Raikage asked there's more right Samui-san. Samui a little pale as she'd seen the damage Naruto's attacks done, nodded and said yes. The other reason I am here is to inform Konoha that my Raikage realizing the mistakes of his father, wants to create a stable alliance with Konoha. She heard everyone in the room snort, including Naruto who asked, does your Kage think us fools? The last time Kumo wanted a stable alliance with us, Hiashi-san lost a brother, Hinata lost an uncle, and that pompous known as Niji lost a father. Samui flinched hearing this and said yes Raikage-sama knows this and. She was cut off by Naruto who said he believes that we'll be foolish enough to accept another deal, so he can try to steal another of our bloodline carriers and breed them like crazy. Samui shaking her head quickly said no my lady. Naruto crossing her arms under her asked then what? Samui said we have no intention of trying to steal a bloodline carrier from Konoha. Raikage-sama and the Council of Kumo knowing that the last attempt at establishing a stable alliance was a disaster, have come up with the perfect way. Naruto and the others now curious asked what is this so-called perfect way? Samui smiling said the Raikage offers myself Samui Nai and Mabui of Kumo as wives to you Princess Naruto Strange. Naruto's eyes widened and Hiruzen nearly choked on his pipe hearing this. Hell everyone had a reaction, including the hidden Yugao who was being restrained by her fellow Anbu. Naruto giving her a plain look asked are you out of your damn mind? Samui blinking asked does this agreement not please you my lady? 2 strong and gorgeous women to be your wives. Naruto was about to speak when in a flash of light, Amaya appeared holding yet another pet for Naruto. This pet made Naruto gain hearts for eyes. In Amaya's arms was a baby saber-toothed tiger. In a flash the tiger was in Naruto's arms as she nuzzled the primal beast with pure adoration in her eyes. Amaya giggling turned and blinked spotting the council. Raising an eyebrow she turned to the hidden and still being restrained Yugao and asked what did I interrupt? Tsume recovering from her shock was about to answer when another flash of light occurred. This time it was Setsuna who appeared. She was holding 2 massive blades that glowed with power. Naruto nuzzling her new pet Link spotting the swords and asked what are those? Setsuna sending a smirk at Amaya said these 2 are legendary blades known as Excalibur and Soul Edge. I knowing that you have Kenjutsu specialist girlfriend, decided to get you these 2 as a present. Naruto titling her head and ignoring how all the females in the room squealed slightly created a clone to hold her new baby. Walking over she accepted the crystalline blue sword first. She moaned as a massive influx of serene power washed down over the entire village. The massive blade actually purring at being in contact with her, transformed into a solid blue katana with a crystal guard. Naruto accepting the one that seemed demonic next, screamed a little bit as a searing pain spread through her. She then moaned again as the pain vanished and a monstrous killing intent washed over the village. This sword also purring transformed into a spear. Naruto liking her 2 new weapons friend smiled brightly at Setsuna and said thanks Setsuna-ni. Setsuna beamed as even with Amaya's head start Naruto had called her sister first. Amaya with a scowl on her face asked will someone answer my question please? Yugao appearing in her civilian attire and glaring at Samui, said Amaya-sama the Kunoichi from Kumo, suggested my Naruto Haim marry her and some other female from Kumo to solidify the fragile and nearly broken alliance between Konoha and Kumo. Amaya and Setsuna both blinked hearing this. Setsuna settling into her interrogator persona turned to Samui and asked do you have any ulterior motives to wanting to marry my little sister? Samui shaking her head said no my lady. Amaya standing in front of Naruto protectively now narrowed her eyes and asked why did you chose her? Samui said it was either her or Sasuke Uchiha, but he's an enemy of your clan and Kumo would rather not piss of the Princess of Destruction or her clan. Setsuna snorting said, even if you had chosen that sniveling piece of shit, he's a prisoner of our clan and locked in an eternal cycle of punishment for using my little sister as a human shield. Samui hearing this nodded. Amaya asked how obedient of a wife would you be and if Naruto makes an enemy of a clan? Samui said I'd do everything she asks within reason. As for the second question if they're an enemy of Naruto, then they're an enemy of mine and Kumo. Setsuna asked what rank were you and we need to see this Mabui person. Samui nodding handed a picture to Setsuna and said I was a jonin. Amaya looking at the picture along with Setsuna, whistled as Mabui was very pretty. Naruko looking over the other shoulder blushed as Mabui was very pretty, of course not as beautiful as her Yugao-chan, but damn close. Yugao also looking at the picture got a little jealous as Mabui had a large also. Setsuna looking at Samui asked how long does the family have to think this over. The civilian council blinked hearing her say family. One of the more idiotic ones asked what do you mean the family, this is a council manor and we'll handle it. Amaya and Setsuna both giving him a plain look said no, as our little sister is a goddess by all means and the youngest member of our clan, thus it is a clan matter. He went to open his mouth again when Naruko said shut your damn mouth and no you enroll your tool. Setsuna and Amaya couldn't stop the snickers if they had tried. The ninja side of the council were all trying very hard not to burst into laughter. Hiruzen actually had his fist shoved into his mouth to keep himself from laughing. The counselor turned bright red with anger and said watch it you little demon. If the council says it then you'll spread your legs like the good little whore you are. He had uttered his last statement in the mortal world. Naruko vanishing appeared in front of the man and said goodbye you piece of shit. She then grabbed his face and sent him to her personal dimension. She then snapping her fingers, made one of her summons appear. She blinked as the summon was new. It was a woman wearing a creepy bunny mask that had a veil on the back. She was holding a hatchet and humming an even creepier song. She turning to Amaya asked who is this? Tsukiko appearing said one of the new members of your killer summons. Her name is the Huntress. Naruko turning to her said alright then, go play with that fool before sacrificing him to the entity. The Huntress nodded and vanished. Naruko blinked when the cries of several civilian counselors could be heard, saying she couldn't do that. Rolling her eyes she snapped her fingers and they vanished to suffer the same fate as the fool from before. She turning to what remained of the civilian council asked anyone else want to step outside of their roles. They all terror-stricken shook their heads no. Samui a little terrified by this display said you have until the end of the second part of the Chunin exams to think this over. My genin team will be participating this year so I'm here with them. Setsuna nodding said alright then. Naruko turning to the old man asked is that all? Samui nodded. Hiruzen and the rest of the council also nodded. Naruko I smiling said good then I'm going home to get my new lovely settled, introduce her to her sister, cook myself and my live-in girlfriend something to eat and then take a shower. If any of you besides the old man needs something run it through Tsunade-sensei, Shizune-sensei, Ino-chan or the old man. She then wrapping her arm around Yugao said peace out bitches. She then vanished in a swirl of atomic flames. Amaya and Setsuna giggled at this and vanished to convene with Diana and Tsukiko. 1 hour later and Naruko was sitting in her hot spring with both Yugao and Ino relaxing as the steam and hot water eased the tension. Naruko with her bathing suit on reached and grabbed her drink, this one non-alcoholic. It was just a simply glass of lemonade and she enjoyed it. Yugao in her bathing suit still was pissed at the audacity of Kumo to try and steal her bae away from her. With some big Ed bimbo and her brown-skinned friend. She wasn't happy about this at first, but then she after talking to Ino, realized that Naruko deserved all of the love in the world. Ino topless with her hair up was close to moaning as the soothing hot water relaxed her tense and slightly sore muscles. Taking her training seriously was doing her body good, but damn if it didn't leave her sore and a little pissed. Alexandria nuzzling her new sibling was making sure the little tiger was okay. Audrey nuzzling her big sister back had no plans of getting in that water with her mama, no matter how much she wanted to. Naruko being able to feel the tension rolling off of Yugao asked babe you do know you and Ino are always going to be my loves and anyone that comes along will have to have your approval right? Yugao hearing this smiled and said I do, but it's nice to have some confirmation. Ino chuckling said I wasn't worried a bit. Naruko giggling said of course you weren't. You're Ino Yamanaka and you're a very confident woman. Both Yugao and Naruko giggled as Ino puffed out her as this was a true statement. Naruko then blinked when Amaya appeared and moaned in delight. Naruko curious asked did you already come to a decision? Amaya nodding said we came to the same decision your girls came to. You dear sister deserve more love than two females can give, thus we've agreed to this deal. She moaning as the water massaged her muscles, said besides we all know you're a kind of girl. Naruko snorting said I am not. Ino agreeing with Naruko nodded and said yeah she's not a girl. She's an girl. Naruko shaking her head said, not an girl either. Yugao nodding said yeah, she's a eyes girl. Naruko shaking her head vigorously said no. You assume that I pick my girls for trivial reasons such as large, perfect or gorgeous eyes. I pick my girls and they pick me because I see their personalities and their spirit and that's what makes them beautiful. Yugao hearing this smiled and said so my perfect ET cup soulful brown eyes and shapely is just as plus to you. Naruko smiling at Yugao on the cheek and said of course. Ino with a bright smile on her face said my are only C cups and my could use some growth. My eyes are perfect and blue just like the sky. Naruko giggling at Ino on the cheek and said of course my darling Yamanaka. Amaya was a little jealous and wished that Naruto would her like that. As if sensing this, Naruto leaned forward and placed a soft on Amaya's cheek. Amaya with a now crimson face said, as I was saying, we agreed to the terms and conditions. You'll need to meet with Samui-san tomorrow and inform her of this. Naruto giggling said okay Amaya Haim. Amaya, feeling her face get even darker, vanished in a swirl of flames. Naruto giggling leaned back and said, she's so into me. Ino rolling her eyes asked, who isn't? Naruto burst out laughing hearing this, as she had recently noticed a rather large fan club dedicated to her and another was calling her the most gorgeous woman of all time. The next day Naruto was sitting in the hotel Samui and her team were staying at waiting for said woman to come meet her. Naruto of course was dressed in her battle gear as the Chunin exams were in about an hour and she had no plans on being late. Naruto, looking up from her thoughts, smiled when Samui walked down along with her team. Naruto blinked as Samui had an all-kunoichi team, with the leader of said genin squad being a rather tomboy-like redhead. Samui, spotting her, walked over and said, Lady Naruto, have you come to a conclusion? Naruto, nodding, handed Samui the scroll and said, you should probably stop calling me Lady Naruto. It will seem weird to everyone if my wife is calling me lady. Samui, hearing this, smiled and bowed. She then said, I promise to be the best wife I can be, my lady. Naruto, chuckling, said, sure you will. Anyway, I have to go. Have to become a Chunin if my wife is a Jonin. She then vanished in a swirl of atomic flames. Samui's genin had huge eyes as they said, that was awesome. Samui, herself a little starstruck, said, I've seen it before, but it still amazes me. Naruto, appearing in front of the academy, was now fully ready for the exams. She, walking into the academy, went right up the first flight of stairs and blinked, spotting the crowd by the wrong doors. Shaking her head, she slipped right on by this little ruse, ignoring the eyes she could now feel on her. She, getting into a rather large room used for training, blinked when a green and orange wearing boy that had eyebrows that looked like caterpillars appeared. He, with the brightest smile she'd even seen on his face, said, Yosh, Lady Naruto. I, the beautiful green beast of Konoha, challenge you to a spar. She, giving him a plain look, asked, you do know we have exams to take, right? He, nodding, said yes, but I promise you this will not take long. Sighing, she asked, why do you want to spar? He, dropping into the good guy pose, said, because I wish to test my flames of youth against your sheer brilliance. She wasn't sure, but she thinks he just complimented her. Shaking her head, she said, no, you'll have to wait until the exams to see my sheer brilliance, as you called it. She then turned and walked into a room to find Tsunade leaning against a wall. Smiling, she asked, why are you here, sensei? Tsunade, snorting, said, we have to make some speech about teamwork and other shit like that. Really, you're doing this exam solo, so there's no point in that. I'm also here to tell you that the old man wants you to dominate. Naruto, hearing this, cackled and said, oh, Gigi is going to regret telling me that. She then walked into the room and blinked, finding Ino locked into a staring contest with a ninja from the sand. Curious, she asked, what's going on here? Shikamaru, groaning, said, your troublesome girl kicked the doors open and glared at everyone before telling them to stay away from you. Naruto, snorting, said, that makes sense, she is a little possessive. Taoji, handing Naruto a bag of chips, said, she's also more likely to punch someone's lights out, all thanks to you. Naruto, cackling as she ate the chips, blinked when Samui's team came up to her and said, so you're going to be Samui-sensei's wife? Naruto, nodding, said yep. She then, tilting her head, asked, what are your names? The leader, giving her a smile, said, Catherine Pierce. The blonde girl, sighing, said, Jamie Breslin. The other female with a blindfold on, said, Ophelia Frost. Naruto, curious, asked, are you wearing the blindfold for a reason? Ophelia nodded. Naruto giggled and asked, you're not going to tell me why? Ophelia, shaking her head, said, no, as you are the enemy at the moment. Naruto, giggling, said, Samui taught her students well. She blinked when a genin from Rain was tossed across the room and Ino could be heard saying, keep your filthy hands off of me, you bastard. Only my Naruto Haim can touch me. Naruto, dodging another Rain genin, asked, what about Yu-chan, or as you called her while you're sleeping, the pink-haired cubic? Ino cut Naruto off by slamming there together. Ino, drawing back, said, damn, I loving you. Naruto, giggling, shot out a ball of destruction as the last Rain genin and said, you shouldn't try to sneak up on my bae. The Rain genin was obliterated and jaws dropped. Shikamaru, as wide as snow, said, Ino, your troublesome princess just destroyed a Rain genin with a single attack. Naruto and Ino, both smiling at him, said, that was her my power of destruction. She hasn't exactly figured out how to combine it with her regular jutsu, but when she do, it'll be even more powerful. Shikamaru wasn't the only to sweat drop hearing this. Naruto blinked when Ibiki Marino appeared and said, alright, you little shits, take a seat. Naruto, doing so, tuned out Ibiki's speech in favor, scoping out the enemies in the room. When her eyes landed on the red-haired boy with black circles under his eyes, she instantly figured this guy was a threat. She blinked when Ibiki announced it was time for the last question. She, looking down at her sheet, laughed as she had unconsciously filled out the exam with correct answers. She guessed her divine authority came in handy once more. Scratching her nose she asked, what are you playing at Scarface? All eyes turned to her, and Ibiki glared at her and asked, what was that, brat? Naruto, sensing his killing intent being sent towards her, snorted and asked, you call that killing intent? Konohamaru has more killing intent in his pinky than that. Hell, I've faced cats with more killing intent. Ibiki, glaring at her even harder, asked, do you think you're exempt because you're a princess? She, giving him a deadpan look, said, we both know you're pulling some straight up bullshit with that line about keeping us from ever becoming more than genin. Only old man Hokage has that power, and he knows damn well what would happen if he tried that shit with me. So get on with whatever is next before I unleash a storm of pranks so bad the Kyuubi will whimper in fear. Everyone in the room blanched hearing this threat, hell the Jonin sensei listening, and thanks to Amaya blanched. Ibiki, with sweat pouring down his forehead, said, congratulations all of you that remain. You passed the first part of the Chunin exams, which was about information gathering. A Chunin must know how to gather information and retain said information no matter what. Naruto, tuning him out, wondered what her babies were doing, as she had to leave both of her precious pets at home because they could get hurt. She found herself paying attention as the always eccentric Anko burst into the room through the window. Naruto couldn't stop herself from giggling as Anko argued with Ibiki about being early and him being soft. Anko, hearing said giggling, smirked and said, Foxy Haim, I heard you were taking the exams this year. Naruto, still giggling, said, it's Foxy-chan to you, Anko. After all, my knight in dango armor should address me like a friend. Anko snickered hearing this and said, if the council heard you call me a knight they'd have a cow. Naruto then gained gleam in her eyes that made many that knew her shiver in fear. Naruto, standing up, coughed and said in a powerful and authority-filled voice, I, Princess Naruto Strange, hereby name Anko Mitarashi as my royal knight. This makes her my right hand. It also allows her privileges such as access to the Royal Strange Arsenal. She's also allowed to interrogate and heavily search any enemies. She's also allowed to have a harem, as I am also adopting Anko Mitarashi into the Strange clan. After all, she's not only my knight, but she's also a sister I wouldn't trade for the entire world. Anko, hearing this, giggled but asked, so if this sister of yours wanted to coat you in chocolate and from your head to your toes and focus on your virgin core? Naruto wasn't the only one to blush hearing this. Hell, Kurenai started to choke on her saliva hearing her friend say this. Naruto, shaking her blush away, said, you're such a pervert. Anko, giggling, said, alright greenhorns, follow me as we take a trip to the playground of monsters. Everyone blinked and Naruto asked, are you seriously taking us to the forest of death? Anko, nodding, said, sure am. Come with me and we will be in a world of pure annihilation. Naruto sweat dropped and said, you'll be there if you truly wish to die. Lola just made another references. Akra-aj for anyone who gets it. Anko giggled and vanished in the classic leaf shushin. Naruto, rolling her eyes, turned to Ino and said, see you there, babe. She then vanished in a tornado that had several shark-like fins in it. Ino, giggling, said, that one is new. It kinda reminds me of that jutsu she came up with. She then, getting up, said, come on Shikamaru and Chaoji, let's get going. I plan on becoming Chunin so I can marry Naruto first. Shikamaru, hearing this, groaned but followed Ino out of the room. Chaoji, having been staring at the blindfolded girl from Kumo, shook his head and followed his team out. Catherine, standing up with her team, smirked and said, you've got an admirer, Ophelia. Said female, rolling her eyes behind her blindfold, said, it doesn't matter if he admires me. He, like many others, will fall to me. Jamie, having been checking out Shikamaru, giggled and said, the lazy one will be mine. Catherine, hearing this, giggled and all three females vanished. They were quickly followed by the rest of the genin. Naruto, in front of the gates that lead to the Forest of Death, had her eyes closed, was looking at the abilities of her two new summons. One she had already dealt with and she creeped Naruto the hell out. It was the Huntress, and the ability Naruto found interesting was the perk Huntress Lullaby. If used correctly it would make one hell of a time. The nightmare was just plain wrong, but its perk Blood Warden would make it difficult for people to escape her clutches. She, opening an eye, smiled peacefully as nature coated her body in a shell of energy. She already knew what this was as she had been introduced to nature chakra by Tsukiko. Because of her being a kaiju and having the animal forms, she essentially drew in nature chakra without trying. Diana had the theory that if Naruto really tried she'd slip into some kind of sage-like mode. Naruto wasn't worried about this as she was still trying to control her full-on kaiju form. She, opening her other eye, found the other genin around her all looking at the forest with big eyes. She couldn't help but giggle as this forest would chew you up and spit you out if you weren't ready. Standing up, she walked over to Anko, who started explaining the second part of the Chunin exams. Naruto, handing out the waivers, felt eyes on her. Turning her head, she found her eyes locked with those of a Kusa ninja. Naruto's instinct screamed at her that this Kusa ninja was more than she seemed. Naruto, letting her eyes shift into their kaiju form, could see that this person had a tie with some reptile. She wasn't sure which reptile it had a tie with, but whatever it was made Naruto's skin crawl. Shaking her head, she handed out the rest of the waivers before returning to Anko's side and checking her equipment. She, finding everything in order, walked over to the gate she had been assigned and stretched. Her plan was to make a mad dash for the tower and take out any genin that got close, except of course her bae. Of course Naruto knew that plans didn't always work out. She, hearing Anko say go, jumped into the forest with the intentions of getting through the exam and making it to the third. Of course she did have an entire forest and several teams of genin to get through, but hopefully that wouldn't be too bad. An hour later, Naruto was sitting in a tree very near the tower in the middle. She had already secured a secondary scroll, but the Kusa ninja from before still had her skin crawling. Her guts and instincts were screaming at her to stay in the forest until at least she saw a teammate make it through. She figured that if the team with the most arrogant genin besides the being punished, Sasuke, made it through, her bae could easily make it through. She blinked, feeling a very powerful chakra signature heading towards her. She could easily put the chakra level of this signature up there with the old man, and he was the Ing Hokage. Standing up, she prepared herself for battle. Her eyes widened when a huge gust of wind came soaring at her. Drawing in her breath, she unleashed a stream of atomic flames on the wind, sending the attack right back, but this time ablaze. Naruto's slitted eyes easily watched the grass ninja from before dodge the attack. Said ninja, approaching her, clapped and said, "Bravo, Naruto-chan." Naruto shivered as this supposed woman had just uttered her name in the most creepy way possible, and that was saying something. She, snorting, asked, "Alright, who are you and what the hell do you want?" The kunoichi chuckled and said, "I wish to test the power of Princess of Destruction." Naruto, snorting again, said, "That didn't answer my question because you sure ain't no lady, and I'll be damn if you're a genin." The knot woman chuckled and said, "How very perceptive of you, Naruto-chan." He then peeled off his face to reveal pale white skin and snake-like yellow eyes. Chuckling, the man said, "My name is Orochimaru and I'm here to test you to see if you're worthy." Naruto, hearing this, groaned as a S-rank criminal and former member of the Sannin would come after her. Shaking her head, she said, "Alright, you snake-faced pedophile, I'm gonna kick your ass." He chuckled and said, "I'd gladly like to see you try." She, snorting at his arrogance, shifted directly into her initial kaiju form. This made her shift into her Godzilla form. Letting loose a monstrous roar, she let the entire forest know that it was about to go down. She, staring Orochimaru in the eyes, didn't even let him say another word as she dashed towards him, intending to swipe his head off of his shoulders. He, quickly blocking with a kunai, chuckled and said, "Oh my, what a powerful form." Instead of responding verbally, she responded by swinging her tail at him. He, trying to block with his other hand, was sent careening away. She was not finished with him, so she dashed forward and unleashed an atomic fireball at him. He, spotting said ball of fiery doom, replaced himself with a log. Naruto, snorting, jumped away from a set of kunai he threw at her. Landing, she rolled herself into a ball and shot forward using her spiky back and tail as a weapon. Orochimaru, dodging this attack, wondered how she knew where he was. Naruto, unrolling, bounced off a tree, launched at him. He, dodging, was expecting for her to take a swipe at him with her hind feet. He screamed when his arm was literally torn off of him. Naruto, literally going through a thin tree, turned just in time to see him regrow his arm. This almost made her puke, but she was able to hold it back. Launching towards him again, she moved the other way as a very large snake tried to swallow her whole. Snarling, she lifted up her right arm, and to the awe of Orochimaru and those who had come to watch, the snake was literally sliced clean in half. Orochimaru, excited now, went to punch Naruto. She, sensing him coming, ducked under the attack and slammed her hand into his stomach. Blood spewed from his mouth as he was hit with the force of a sledgehammer. She didn't stop there as she followed this up with a few more punches to his stomach. Orochimaru, bringing up his hand, tried to counter, but she head-butted him, making his world spin a little. She then followed this up with a kick to his stomach, sending him flying once more. Naruto, not letting up for a second, unleashed a stream of atomic flames at him. Orochimaru, flipping over, ducked under these killer flames and sent a mud wall at her. His eyes widened when she simply roared and his attack crumbled. She roared again, and to his shock, a dragon of atomic flames came rushing towards him. Naruto, having just used her atomic dragon jutsu, sucked in as much air as she could, then unleashed a superheated gust of wind. This wind connected with the dragon and Orochimaru shit his pants as the dragon tripled in size. He, replacing himself with a log, said, "I see I am going to have to get serious." Naruto snorted as her response to his statement. She then ducked under what could have been a devastating punch. She then dodged a jab from his other hand. She then jumped over a kick. Landing, she connected a punch to his jaw and was rewarded with a kick that sent her flying. She, flipping in the air, unleashed several high-powered atomic fireballs at him. He quickly countered with several high-powered mud bullets. This mud, of course, became irradiated. She then shot forward and engaged him, a battle of taijutsu. But those watching this battle, Hinata, with a crimson blush on her face, was drooling as she found even this new draconic form of her in her mind, her true love. Why? The fact that Naruto was fighting an S-class missing ninja and member of the legendary Sannin only added fuel to this fire. Shina Aburam was making plans to demand her father broker her a marriage with Naruto. Strange as the girl, no goddess had Shina's panties soaked in hive buzzing. Shina was cashing in the daddy's little girl card she held over her father and pretending to be a boy card she had over her mother as she wanted to Naruto's wife. No, she need to be Naruto's wife as that was her ultimate destiny. Hiba was curled up into a tight ball and whimpering as Naruto's aura that used to scream weak bitch now screamed mega alpha. It also screamed that either obey her or die. He didn't want to die before having at least one time or seeing Hinata die. Either one worked for him. Akamaru was wagging his tail as this battle excited him as he had never seen a battle between two alphas. He had no clue who was going to win, but he was rooting for the girl who always gave him treats. The team from Sound had wide eyes as their leader was locked in battle with a girl who had transformed into a ing dragon. Zaku, like the idiot he was, wanted to test his power against Naruto and after defeating her give her the honor of having his kids. Lola delusional much. Dosu had no delusions that if he got in a battle with Naruto that he would win. Hell, he was swearing oaths that if Orochimaru gave his team the mission to kill Naruto, he'd throw himself at her mercy and tell her everything he knew, and unlike Zaku, he and Kin knew a lot. Hintsuchi had lidded eyes and her hand down her pants. Kin, staring at Naruto with pure unrestrained, had never in her life been more turned on than she was now. She was already making plans on betraying her two teammates and Orochimaru so that she could be with Naruto. Catherine had wide eyes, not believing the power the destined wife of her sensei had and that she was a ing dragon. Not even mentioning she was going toe-to-toe with Orochimaru. Jamie, with her jaw scraping the ground, completely understood why her brother was terrified of ever facing Naruto. Strange, as this goddess was monstrously powerful. Ophelia, actually not having her blindfold on, had eyes visible as she stared at what she determined to be her goddess battling the legendary Orochimaru. Anko in the trees, having rushed into the forest after discovering the bodies of the grass ninja, was stock still watching as Yugao's girlfriend and future wife battle with her former sensei, and to her shock and awe was a damn dragon. The Anbu that she had brought with her into the forest stared in pure awe as their leader's girlfriend battled the legendary Orochimaru, someone who their Hokage and Jiraiya of the Sannin had trouble with. They were also wondering if anyone had told said leader that her girlfriend was locked in a battle with an infamous traitor. They didn't think so, because if she did know, Yugao would already be in the forest helping Naruto try to kill Orochimaru. Niji Hyuga was shitting his pants as he had planned on going after Naruto's scroll to show her that fate wasn't on her side. Witnessing this battle, he decided that fate was no longer his patron as he was now going to worship Naruto. Strange, the dragon goddess of Konoha. Ten, also having a good view of the battle, was shockingly in the same state as Kin, except she was moaning lowly. She didn't have to betray her team, all she had to do was find Naruto in Konoha the tower and beg to be one of Naruto's loves. She knew that if Naruto accepted that she'd be bearing Naruto as many kids as Naruto wanted. She also knew that this meant the end of her Kunoichi career, but she was fine with this. The spies of Danzo were feeling an emotion they thought they had lost. They were completely and utterly terrified as Naruto's power was godly and that was lowballing it. They were also wondering if serving Danzo was the right thing to do and if they should not gather the other root ninja and approach Naruto with an offer to serve her. Karen Uzumaki had hearts for eyes and drool pouring from her mouth as Naruto's chakra had already been attractive to her, now it was like a damn homing beacon and Karen had her target locked. She easily ignored her bleeding out teammates as she was going to be Naruto's Kusa, Orochimaru, and Invasion's plans be damned. She giggled with glee as she couldn't wait to meet her goddess. Kabuto Yakushi and his teammates were also watching, and Kabuto could easily tell that his foolish master was not only outclassed but was being toyed with. Spotting this, he quickly came to the decision that he should be Naruto's spy and medical expert instead of Orochimaru, who was a ing pedophile. Plus the snake-faced bastard had made Kabuto kill his own mother. His two teammates ed there as they foolishly believed that Orochimaru would soundly defeat Naruto and they could then have fun with her. Diana, watching from Naruto's estate, wondered what her baby girl was playing at as they both knew Naruto could easily drop Orochimaru off. Amaya, sitting in a chair in Naruto's room, was growling as that white-faced bastard had her sacred sword and was attacking her little sister. Tsukiko, having actually figured out what Naruto was playing at, giggled as her little sister was genius. Setsuna, wearing one of Naruto's shirts, had also figured out Naruto's plan and was jealous. She wished Naruto would do something like this for her. Sarutobi, watching through his crystal ball along with Tsunade, Shizune and the extremely nervous duo of Yugao and Samui, was worried for his surrogate grandchild as the girl was battling his treacherous student. Tsunade wasn't even slightly worried as she had a feeling that Naruto had a plan of some kind. Shizune was in the same boat as Tsunade as she not only had faith in her co-student but she had faith in the woman she was in love with. Yugao, biting her nails, had been ordered not to interfere by Sarutobi as if she did, he'd have to remove Naruto from the Chunin exams. This worried the shit out of her, as she wanted to tear into the forest and help her bae battle the big white snake, but knew that if Naruto was pulled from the Chunin exams due to her actions, there would be hell to pay. Samui, biting her lip, wanted to do the same as Yugao, but didn't want to piss off Naruto, nor have her team removed from the exams. She knew that said team was closely watching Naruto's battle as she could sense them. She knew the only thing she could was have faith in Naruto and her team. Back with the battle. Orochimaru was exhausted after only battling Naruto for about 40 minutes. This girl was a powerhouse. He chuckled as if he had her power and body, he'd be unstoppable. This made him giddy as he was going to give her his curse seal, and then she'd come to him for power. Naruto, reverting back to her human form, huffed as she was out of energy to fuel her kaiju form. Shaking her head, she chuckled as it was time for her plan. Smirking, she said, "Oi Pedamaru." He, narrowing his eyes at the nickname he had given her, asked what. She, giving him a cheeky smile, asked, "You wanna know the best part of having 3 goddesses as elder sisters, who all have the hots for you, and have a silly competition to see who earns your love first?" He, blinking, had to admit he was curious about the answer and nodded. She, still with her cheeky smile, said, "The things they give you to get ahead of each other. For example, Setsuna Haim gave me both of my lovely pets, knowing how much I've always wanted pets and love animals." Her smile remained as she said, "Amaya Haim gave me her aura of the sun, and it basically keeps me warm no matter what. Even if I'm hunting a ing seal in the frozen tundra, I'm warm and toasty. It also makes me immune to all flames, including those of the infamous Uchiha Mangekyou Sharingan." Eyes widened hearing this, and Orochimaru really uttered. Naruto, still with her cheeky smile, said, "Tsukiko-chan gave me this awesome bloodline called Slayer magic. It allows me to slay dragons, gods, biju, and of course kaiju. The best part is that's only one part of it, as the second part allows me to create illusions so powerful that they literally become reality." Orochimaru, hearing this, said as again as that bloodline sounded positively perfect. Naruto said, "Of course, having a primordial goddess for a mother viewing for your love, trust and affection is also highly beneficial. For instance, she gave me a certain dijutsu that you are so hungry for in its mostly fully evolved form." She then, pushing chakra into her eyes, revealed to the pure joy of Orochimaru a fully mature eternal Mangekyou Sharingan, with her pattern being that of the sun and the moon entwined together in perfect harmony. She, ignoring the shock she could feel rolling off of the people watching, said, "She also, knowing my unyielding love for my sword-wielding bae Anbu Captain Yugao Yazuki, soon to be strange, granted me something that would make said woman worship the ground I walk." Orochimaru, not the only curious, asked, "What is that?" Naruto said, "The one thing any swordsman would literally sell his soul for. She, my dear white snake, body-stealing pedophile, gave me the bloodline that literally allows me to create sentient weapons that not only evolve but grow." Jaws dropped hearing this, and Orochimaru wanted Naruto as his body for sure now. She, giggling, said, "I've had said bloodline since getting back from Wave and was going to surprise Yugao Haim with it as a wedding present, but due to circumstances, meaning you, I'll just show her now." She, holding out her arm, smiled and said, "Behold Pedamaru, Mom, Amaya Haim, Tsukiko Haim, Setsuna Haim, Old Man, Tsunade Sensei, Shizune-chan, Yugao Haim, Samui Haim, Anko-chan, my first sentient weapon." A humongous amount of chakra then flooded the entire village and the forest lit up. Naruto, cloaked in said chakra, smiled and said, "Shield the soul in armor, cover the world with crystals. Redeem Soul Calibur." The energy exploded into a pillar of light as slowly a gorgeous crystal-covered sword appeared with a glowing jewel being in the middle of the guard. Said guard looked like blue dragon wings. Naruto, accepting her blade, smiled and asked, "What do you think, Pedamaru?" He shivered as he instantly knew that this sword was too damn powerful for a simple kunai. He, opening his mouth, felt the snake holding his sword appear. He, taking the sword, smirked and said, "Let's see how it compares to my kusanagi." His eyes widened when Naruto literally appeared in front of him and knocked said blade into the air. Naruto, jumping, caught it and said, "Redeem." Orochimaru literally screamed. The kusanagi was not only cleansed of the impurities he forced on it, but was cleansed of his influence. Naruto, landing with the kusanagi, waved her hand, and the blade vanished in a swirl of flames, heading back where it belonged. Orochimaru, with an insane look, his eyes knew that he had to have Naruto now. Going through hand seals, he extended his head and neck and sunk his teeth into Naruto's neck, not even realizing that is exactly what Naruto had wanted. Naruto's eyes glowed as she devoured the chunk of soul he had tried to place into her and then absorbed the knowledge of the curse seal. Smirking, she pretended to fall down in pain. Orochimaru, proving himself to be the fool she thought he was, chuckled and said, "I'll be leaving you with my little present, Naruto Haim. You will come to me to learn its power. Until then, farewell, Naruto." He then sunk into the ground, leaving the village. Naruto, once sure he was gone, laughed loudly and said, "That idiot. He gave me exactly what I wanted. Now that I have his knowledge on the cursed seals, I can remove his evil Hiki of Doom from Anko and anyone he gave it to." She then yawned and said, "But first it's time to get to tower." The battle may not have been exhausting, but staying in kaiju form for so long without eating sure burned my energy up. Naruto yawning again said thankfully I already have both scrolls needed. She then vanished in swirl of flames heading directly for the tower. Anko shaking out of her shock said damn that was one hell of a fight. She then gained stars for eyes as she said, I'm going to be filthy stinking rich. I'm so happy I placed all of my money on her. She then gaining a very wry look on her face said of course when I do win, I'm going to do exactly as I told her I would, but more. She and the Anbu the vanished, while those still watching either sweat dropped or moved on. The Root Ninja on the other hand quickly nodded to each other as they were gathering the others and becoming Naruto's Legion of Dragons. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow THEMIGHTYSHEVENOM13 for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.